We are back with another story, which is on What If Bella Imprinted on Paul. Before that, more than 50% of our viewers haven't subscribed our channel yet. So do it now to stay updated. So let's back on story. She sat alone on the cliffs, listening to the roar of the ocean as it crashed onto the rocks below. It was the eve of her wedding rehearsal and she was having second thoughts. She worried she was rushing into this marriage for fear of him leaving her again. His leaving had changed her in ways which were irreparable. Now she wondered if she was with him because she loved him or because she had to be. As she stared out at the blue ocean, she thought back on all the changes from the last 6 months. When he walked away from her that day in the woods, she was unprepared for the amount of pain and despair she would suffer through. When Jacob brought her out of the darkness, she was so grateful. He brought her to the pack, to the people she considered her family. Now they were all gone from her. Their absence hurt her more than Edward's leaving ever did. She missed Emily and her cheery disposition, as well as Kim's laughter and smile. She missed the bear hugs from her pseudo-big brothers Sam and Jared. She missed the joyful antics of Jacob, Quill and Embry, or the Three Stooges as she had dubbed them. She missed Seth's innocence and Leah's no-holds-barred attitude. She even missed Paul's anger, which always seemed to be directed at her. She knew when she ran off with Alice to save Edward from himself she would likely lose the family she had grown to love. She expected them to stop speaking to her, but she never expected the outright hatred which poured from all of them every time she saw them. Even her uncle, Billy, was shunning her. It got worse when they found out she was going to marry him and become a vampire, the pack's mortal enemy. She also knew, even though it was her choice, there would be a war. She desperately wanted to avoid that. As the wedding planning progressed, so did her despondency. Any choice she made was quickly shot down by Alice and soon, Bella just stopped fighting her. Suddenly, the simple wedding Bella envisioned had become a flashy affair. Edward was no help when it came to controlling his sister, so Bella was barely speaking to either of them. Trying to get some time away from them started a large fight, shocking her vampire family. "You've completely taken over everything. This isn't even the wedding I wanted anymore," she had shouted at Alice. "Bella, love," Edward started. Bella cut him off. "Don't, Edward. You've done absolutely nothing to help stop her. If you truly want to marry me, maybe you should think about my opinions and not the all-knowing seer." "Isabella," Esme shouted in shock. "All I want is a day, one full day, on my own away from it all. That is not too much to ask." "Bella, the wedding is in 2 days," Alice reminded her. "Yes, and if any of you expect me to be there, you will all stay away from me, including you, Edward." She had stormed out of the Cullen home and driven to her father's. She'd locked her window and drawn the curtains. After a fitful night's sleep, she found herself out on the cliffs, trying to figure out how her life had spiraled so out of control. "Bella," she jumped when she heard the voice behind her. Without turning around, "Sorry, I just needed some space, I'll leave." "You don't have to go. Is everything okay?" She sighed. "No, Sam, it's not. I don't know what happened, but nothing I'm doing seems right anymore." She sniffed and couldn't stop the tears from running down her face. For once, she didn't want to. "How did it get to this point? I'm not happy, Sam. Is this what I've signed myself up for? An eternity of misery?" Sam sat down beside her. He had been waiting for this moment ever since the Cullens had come back. What if you could change it all? "What do you mean?" Sam sighed and looked at the young woman who had come to mean so much to him and his pack. He knew if he followed through, everything would change. He had been told he would remember, but he wasn't sure if that was true. He pulled a vial of green liquid out of his pocket and rolled it around in his hand. "Old Quill sent me on a vision quest recently. The pain and discord running through the pack is overwhelming. Losing you has been very hard on all of us, Bella. All for different reasons, but the loss is there." He looked down at her with sad eyes. "My quest showed me our true destinies. They're so beautiful, Bella. My quest told me this isn't the path we were meant to be on." He held the vial out to her. "Old Quill made an old shaman's potion. The 3 of us will be the only ones to remember the paths we could have gone down. If you choose to drink this, everything will be wiped away from the time I found you after Edward left." "Sam, what if it doesn't work? From what I've been told, the only way it will fail is if the same decisions are made." Bella choked back a sob as she took the vial from his outstretched hand. "No one can know, can they? Not even Emily? No, this affects her as well. But I'll be there with you every step of the way. Sam kept his eyes on her. What do you say, sister, ready to change all of our lives? Bella stayed silent, but reached out to the man who had been her brother. This could be the thing she needed to be happy again. Looking at Sam, she already knew her decision. Gripping his hand in hers, she swallowed the green liquid, grimacing at the taste. Bella opened her eyes and watched as Edward walked away from her. She remembered the heartbreak, the way she tried to suck oxygen into her lungs. She felt her feet move to follow him, but couldn't catch him. She tripped over the same tree limb and stayed on the ground. She remembered everything. She knew she needed to wait for Sam, praying he remembered as well. She was so far off the path she couldn't figure out where she was. Knowing it was futile to try, she sought out some shelter under a canopy of trees and huddled down to wait for Sam. She wasn't sure how much time had passed since Edward left her, but it was long dark when she heard someone yelling her name. Sam, she said softly, knowing he would hear her. Moments later, the black wolf appeared before her. Hey, please tell me you remember too? Sam moved back to the bushes and phased, pulling on his shorts as he came out. I remember it all. Are you okay? Bella shrugged. Honestly, I think I'm in shock. I wasn't sure it would work. What do we do now? We start over. Remember what I said on the cliffs? I'm with you the whole way. According to what I saw, this is where things drifted off course. You weren't meant to spend months in exiled depression. We won't let you sink this time, Bella. She nodded. Sam held his hand out to her, helping her out of her hiding place. The pair of them walked in silence for a while, until they were almost back to her place. Bella could see the swish of flashlights as they searched the night for her. Try not to be so foreboding when you stare at Jacob, it freaks him out. He doesn't believe the legends. Noted. When you spend time with him, don't let him be so touchy with you. He developed those feelings for you quickly. Best we avoid that this time around. I will. She looked up at him. Perhaps you should carry me? He nodded and swept her up in his arms. We'll get it right this time, Bella. Charlie, Jacob yelled when he saw Sam appear with Bella in his arms. Oh, thank God. Charlie ran up to the large Quileute man. She's all right, Sam explained as he passed her over into her father's waiting arms. Thank you, Sam. Paul and Jared ran up to him as Charlie staggered under the weight of his daughter. Sam reached out to help stabilize them and heard Bella whisper, He's gone, Daddy. He left me. I know, baby. You'll be okay now. Charlie carried her into the house as Bella looked over his shoulder at Sam and the others who followed behind them. Jared stared at her with sadness in his eyes, while Paul stared at the ground, angry his evening was interrupted. Charlie sat her on the couch and Dr. Gerandi looked her over. She's just got a few scratches, nothing serious and the beginnings of hypothermia. Just get her warm and let her rest, she'll be fine in a couple of days. Once everyone cleared out, Sam stepped forward and pressed something into Bella's hand. After giving her a gentle squeeze, he walked out of the house followed by Paul and Jared. Dad, I'm gonna go take a shower. Okay, I'll put an extra blanket on your bed. Charlie followed his daughter up the stairs. Are you okay, Bells? He left me, Dad. He told me he loved me and he left. She sighed. I'll be okay in time. The days passed and after a week, Bella finally reached out to Sam. I'm going stir crazy, lol. Come to the res. You can meet Emily, S. Okay. I'll be there in a while. See you soon, S. She dressed in jeans and a long-sleeved t-shirt. She chuckled at the irony of the silver wolf on the front of it. Paul was a silver wolf and the most volatile of the pack. Today would certainly be interesting. Sam heard her truck as she made her way onto the reservation. They hadn't discussed how this would work since she shouldn't know where he lived. Hearing her head toward the beach, he smiled. Jared was on patrol and would bring her to him. Jared phased and pulled on his shorts as he walked out of the woods. He had followed the rumbling truck to the beach. Bella? She turned and gave him a timid smile. Hi, Jared, right? He nodded. What are you doing down here? I can't sit in my bedroom anymore. I need to live my life. I thought I would get some fresh air and think. She walked on the sand toward a fallen log and sat down. I've always enjoyed First Beach. So how have you been doing? Jared sat beside her. He was genuinely curious about her, feeling as if she was someone who would be important. I'm doing okay. I'm more pissed than anything else. What? Why are you pissed? She shrugged. I let him control me, Jared. He told me how to act, speak, what to eat, even how to dress. Since he left, I realized I don't even know who I am anymore. He's been gone a week. I don't want to mourn an unhealthy relationship anymore. I think it's time to find me again. She looked over at him. The night Sam found me, he gave me his number. He invited me to come down today. In my excitement to get out, I forgot to find out where he lived. Jared laughed. You're something else, girl. Come on, I'll take you there. He helped her up from the log and followed her to her truck. Bella handed him the keys as she hopped into the passenger side. After getting settled and turning on some music, Jared drove them to Sam's. Hearing the rumble of her truck, Sam was waiting for them on the porch. He watched his brother help the girl he thought of as a sister out of the truck and walked toward him. Bella, how are you? I'm okay, Sam. She walked up the steps and stopped in front of him. It's time to move on. Well, come meet Emily. She needs another female around here. When the three of them walked in, Emily was sitting at the table looking through a cookbook. Bella remembered she was always looking for a homemade spaghetti sauce recipe and never found one good enough. Emily, Sam started gaining her attention. I want you to meet someone. Emily smiled shyly at the group and stood from her seat. You must be, Bella, welcome. Thank you. Looking over at the cookbook, what are you looking for in there? Oh, well, I cook for Sam and his friends. I'm always trying out spaghetti sauce on them, trying to perfect a homemade one, not something from a jar. I've yet to find one I like. They'll eat anything though, she giggled, hugging herself to Sam's side. I happen to know a good one. I'd be happy to teach you. She and Jared watched as Emily's face lit up and Sam smiled at her happiness. That would be great, Bella. When do you want to start? I'm not doing anything now. Emily grabbed Bella's hand enthusiastically and pulled her into the kitchen, Jared and Sam laughing behind them. She walked along the shoreline, enjoying the breeze coming off the water. It had been a week since her first visit and hanging out on the res had already become a habit. She was currently waiting for Sam so they could discuss how she was going to discover the pack. Bella, she turned, smiling when she saw her friend. Hey, Jake. What are you doing down here? Jacob walked to her and swung her up in a hug. She laughed, hugging him back. I'm actually waiting for Sam. She watched as his face got a stormy look on it. He's not a good guy, Bells. You should stay away from him, the other two as well. Jake, you don't know him. He rescued me and has asked for nothing in return. He's nice and I really like Emily. Bella watched his expression as he got angrier with her. Thankfully, Sam showed up, stopping any further argument. Hey, Bella. Sorry I'm late. Bella smiled at him. It's okay. Jake was keeping me company. Jacob. Sam said, trying to keep the expression on his face neutral. Yuli. Where's the rest of your cronies? Bella sighed. Jake. Jacob shook his head. I'll catch you later, Bells. Sam and Bella watched him walk away, both knowing he was changing faster than before. It's happening earlier this time, Sam. I know. Sam looked at her and indicated they should walk. So, Bella started. I'm gonna have to be let in on the secret soon. How are we gonna handle that? Well, I actually have an idea about that. Sam grinned. I think you need to slap Paul again. She laughed. Seriously? He and I sorta get along. Sam laughed. Yeah, you get along, but only when you cook for him or he's helping you with your homework. Fine, Bella let him have that since it was the only time they got along. What would be my reasoning? Football. Bella knew Paul was a die-hard Seahawks fan, like a lot of the Olympic Peninsula. She, however, loved the Cardinals and the two teams happened to be playing on Sunday. I can see that, she chuckled. Okay, now what about the two vamps that will be around soon? Well, the redhead already has been. Sam, why didn't you tell me? Bella started to panic, fearing Victoria would get her. Calm down. Sam put his hands on her shoulders. You've been perfectly safe. I've been outside your house most nights. That's something else we need to figure out. How do we tell the guys she's after you? Bella thought about it for a minute. Laurent hadn't shown up until March before, but things were a little different now. He could not show up at all. They needed to be prepared for anything. When did Embry phase? I think it was after the new year last time. Bella looked up at Sam. I think we need to talk to old Quill. Sam nodded. I agree. Let's get you in the know first. Bella was running behind getting to Sam's and was agitated. She grabbed everything she'd prepared for an afternoon and evening of football on the res, throwing it in her truck. Come on, Dad. Charlie was hitching a ride to the Blacks to watch the game with Billy and Harry. He walked out of the house with 2 6-packs of vitamin R in his hands, and Bella knew she'd be staying on the res that night. Let's go, Bells. After Bella dropped him off, she drove to Sam's, beeping the horn as she pulled up. Jared came bounding out of the house to help her. Hey, Jelly Belly. He kissed her cheek before reaching in the truck to grab the crockpot loaded with chili. Damn, this smells good, sis. Jared had started calling her sis a few days after she began hanging around them. Paul growled every time he did it, making her laugh. Thanks. She followed him into the house, her arms laden with more food and goodies, plus she had her backpack on her shoulder. Bella. Emily smiled and walked over to help her. Thanks, Em. Looking into the living room, she glanced at the TV and then the 2 men seated on the couches. Did I miss kickoff? Not yet. Sam grinned at her. Good. Hey, Paul, I have some trig homework. Think you could help me after the game? Paul turned to look at her as she placed her bag by the door. I guess. Don't you have a test coming up? He could be nice when he wanted to. Yeah, Friday. He just nodded and turned back to the TV, just as the teams took the field. Bella took off her jacket and walked over to sit in the chair beside the couch Paul was on. She waited for the inevitable reaction to her shirt. Oh, come on, Paul shouted when he looked at her. You can't seriously be an Arizona fan? Bella laughed. I'm from Arizona, Paul. Did you think Charlie influenced my team choices? I should have known, he muttered. Shitty taste in boyfriends and football teams. What was that? Paul ignored her and kept his eyes trained on the screen. He would never admit she was growing on him just like she had the other 2. The only difference is he didn't see her as a sister, which is why he would never meet her eyes. By the time the halftime rolled around, the Cardinals were up and Bella had forgotten about the plan. She was taunting Paul and cheering every time something went wrong for Seattle. Huh? Pete Carroll is gonna go into the locker room and cry like the little baby he is. Maybe Wilson will shed some tears with him. Bella was dancing around the living room, Jared and Sam laughing at her. She needs to come every Sunday for football, Jared laughed. I've never met a girl who liked the game, let alone understood it. Shut up, woman, Paul was growling. Why, can't handle a little ribbing, Polly? Bella taunted him. Paul got up and growled at her. Sit the fuck down, leech lover. Bella's eyes widened. She thought it would take more to get him to this point. What did you call me? You heard me. Why are you even here? Paul got in her face. Easy, Paul. Sam started. Stay out of it, Sam. Keeping his eyes on Bella. You finally decide humans were good enough for you, leech lover? Before she could stop herself, Bella felt her hand crack across Paul's cheek, his head turning slightly from the force. When he turned back to her, she knew it was enough. Sam and Jared both jumped from the couch, grabbing him and dragging him outside. Bella was hot on their heels, while Paul growled and raged. They just got him outside when he burst into his furry counterpart, causing Bella to scream. However, there was no way anyone was prepared for what happened next. Paul's wolf looked at Bella for a minute, whined, and then lay on his belly before her. Sam? Bella questioned without removing her eyes from the silver wolf. Well, fuck. Bella was stunned. She didn't think this had happened before, but needed to ask Sam. The first priority was getting Paul to phase back and apologize for hitting him. Bella? Jared looked at the girl who was becoming his sister and would now become Pac. I'm okay, Jared. I'm just stunned and maybe a little confused. Bella looked at him. Why don't you go inside with Emily and we'll get Paul back to himself? Bella looked at the silver wolf one more time before turning to go into the house. She sat down on the couch, noticing the game had come back on, but no longer caring. She couldn't help but wonder if Paul had imprinted on her before and hid it from her. And if he had, why? You okay, sweetie? Emily handed Bella a glass of water and sat beside her. I'm fine. She ran her finger over the rim of her water glass. Sam will explain everything, Bella. Trust me, it will all work out. The 2 of them looked up as the 3 of them came back in. Bella wanted to do or say something, but waited. Emily got up and walked to Sam as Jared sat in the chair Bella had previously occupied. Paul walked over to her and sat in front of her on the coffee table. Are you okay? Bella looked up at him and met his gaze, feeling a jolt when their eyes met. Yeah, confused, but otherwise okay. She reached her hand out and gently touched his cheek. Are you okay? I'm sorry I smacked you. I'm fine. He smiled slightly and brought his hand up to hers. Bella, I think we need to explain some things to you. Sam started as he watched his newly imprinted brother. Bella listened intently to everything Sam told her, including everything about imprinting. So what you're saying is Paul imprinted on me? Paul answered, yes. It means I'll be whatever you need me to be. Bella cocked her head to the side as she scrutinized him. What if I want someone who will love me for the rest of my life? Someone who wants a family and will raise babies with me? Is that what you want? What do you want? Bella turned the tables on him. She knew he'd had a hard life, but wasn't sure if he had ever wanted to have a family or fall in love. Not the wolf or the imprint. What do you, the man, want? Paul grinned. I want what Sam and Emily have. Kids would be a bonus. I want all of that too. I think we can have it, Paul. She grinned at him. Despite your shitty taste in football teams, I accept the imprint. Paul laughed and hugged her to him. I'll make you happy, Bella. It won't always be sunshine and roses, but it'll be full of love. Unable to stop herself, Bella leaned up and pressed her lips to his in a soft kiss. When she pulled back, he was wearing that smirk she was so familiar with. CTA week after the imprint, Old Quill and Sam were waiting for her in her driveway when she got home from school. When she exited her truck, they followed suit. Ah, young swan, we need to discuss some things. I believe you also had some questions. Do you want to come in? Bella gestured toward her house. No, we must go to a sacred place so thoughts can be hidden. Bella nodded and climbed into Sam's truck, scooting to the middle and making room for the shaman. Sam drove back toward the reservation, but turned down a side road just before he got there. The terrain was rough and they bounced in the cab of the truck. Finally, he pulled to a stop and the three of them walked to a circle where Bella could tell a fire had burned before. Sit. Old Quill pointed the pair of them to a log as he sat on another. I will tell a story first and then answer your questions. The old man weaved a tale of happier times for the Quileute tribe, full of prosperity and hope. Then the cold ones came, destroying that peace. When Taha Aki joined with the wolf, peace began again. Unfortunately, their enemies did not stay away. Ephraim Black saw they were different from their legends and wanted to keep the peace. As the years flew by, the legends became watered down until the truth was buried in old scrolls. My vision quest showed me a better way, but we need to break with the cold ones, as they are what has caused the young men in our tribe to phase once more. You're the key to that, little one. You and our alpha. The black boy will never become alpha, he will not have the wherewithal to lead when the time comes. There is a battle on our horizon and your knowledge of the enemy will help. Samuel's vision quest was needed to get us on the correct path to making our tribe prosperous once again. And also to save lives. Old Quill finished his tale and looked at Bella and Sam, waiting for their questions. Did Paul imprint on me in the other time? Yes, but he was too angry to give in to it. You were never supposed to be exiled the way you were. Paul was so angry about your devotion to the vampire his heart simply wouldn't let him accept you. His is one of the lives which needed to be saved. Are the Cullens still going to return? Yes. Your future will disappear for the seer, but instead of only one returning, all will come at once. They will be here by the new year. Sam looked at Bella and then to the elder. Will the same ones still phase? You ask about Leah? Yes, they will all phase. Leah's phase was written in the scrolls. She will be the lone female wolf, none before her and none after. The animosity between you two will be eased by her phase and erased once she imprints. Who is her imprint? Ah, that is still to be determined. There are two possibilities. The two vampires after Bella. Sam looked at her and then back to the old man. They will still come. One in the next week or so, the other after the Cullens return. Old Quill sighed. Any other questions? Isabella's mate grows anxious. When we are in wolf form, will the others ever know Bella and I changed things? No, and they will never be told. Things will not be as they were this time, so therefore you no longer have the gift of foresight. You have already changed what was needed. Old Quill stood as Sam and Bella followed him back to the truck. After they dropped Old Quill at the res, Sam drove Bella back home. Embry phased 2 days ago. Sam broke the silence in the truck. That's definitely earlier than before. She looked over at him. I'm glad we don't know what's going to happen now, Sam. This way our reactions are real and so are our feelings. I am too, Bells. Sam commented as he pulled into her drive. They saw Paul pacing in front of the porch. When he saw Sam's truck, he ran toward them. Are you okay? He grabbed her off her feet and into his arms. When I didn't hear from you? I'm fine. Bella clung to his shoulders. She sensed something was going on. Paul, what's wrong? He pulled back and set her on her feet. There was a leech around your place. Jared caught the scent when he was on patrol. What? Bella gasped. It's not the Cullens, right? No, he didn't recognize the scent. Bella watched Paul fighting the instinct to phase, especially since she was so close. Knowing even she wouldn't be able to stop him, she stepped away from his so he could let out his wolf. Paul, vibrating with anger and fear, looked at Bella with a tormented expression before phasing into his silver wolf. She desperately wanted to go to him, but his whine stopped her. Sam phased beside him and the pair of them ran into the woods. Paul, she's fine. She was right in front of you. A bloodsucker was around her house. Sam, that's my mate, P. And we're gonna protect her. Calm down. I'm sure she's worried about you. That was enough to calm him down. He ran back to her house. When he got to her backyard, he saw she had left him a pair of shorts on the deck. He phased with a smile and picked them up. After he was dressed, she opened the back door. Are you okay? She had a crease of worry on her forehead. Paul pulled her into his still trembling arms. No, I'm not. Paul, she clung to his shoulders as she tried to calm him. Pressing her face into his neck, she gently kissed the spot behind his ear. I'm here, I'm okay. You don't understand, Bella. He set her on her feet and looked in her eyes. I can't lose you, it would kill me. Bella pulled him into the kitchen and pushed him into a chair. She eased herself onto his lap and stared at him. Gripping his hands in hers, she put one on her cheek and pressed the other to her heart. I'm right here. You can feel my heart beating, feel the warmth of my skin. Paul rubbed his thumb over the apple of her cheek and felt the way her heart rate increased. He loved that it was his touch making her heart jump. He moved his hand and pulled her head down so he could press his lips to hers. He felt her sigh against his mouth and deepened the kiss, his tongue stroking hers. He groaned when he heard her moan and knew he needed to slow things down. Ending the kiss with a few short pecks, he placed his forehead to hers. I'll keep you safe, Bella. She opened her eyes and stared into his. I know you will. The week of Thanksgiving snuck up on Bella and she was completely unprepared. Emily had assured her it was fine and she and Charlie were more than welcome to join her, Sam and the rest of the pack. Charlie, however, had taken a double shift since one of his deputies and his wife just had a new baby. I'll bring you a plate later, Dad. Bella promised as she loaded a basket with the things she made. She'd had to make extra since Embry phased a little ahead of when he had before. Charlie helped her carry the basket to her truck. Thanks, Bells. Be careful and have a good time. I will, Dad, thanks. She leaned up and kissed his cheek before climbing in her vehicle. She watched as Charlie drove away and double-checked her surroundings, before she started her truck. Sending a quick text to Paul to let him know she was on her way, she put the truck in gear and drove out toward La Push. She had barely driven for 5 minutes when she hit something hard and her truck stopped next to a tree. She looked around and saw bright red eyes looking at her through the window of her driver's side door. With a scream, she moved to the other side of her truck. As she tried to yank on the door and move away from the reaching arm, she smacked her head on the edge of the door. The last thing she heard before she lost consciousness was a feral growl. Paul was standing around, laughing with the pack, nursing a beer, when he felt a hard tugging on his chest. He dropped his bottle and grabbed at his chest before looking in the direction of Forks. Bella, was all he said before he took off running, phasing as soon as he hit the tree line. I've got the leech, but I need help. Embry, we're coming. Embry, Sam. Where is Bella? Paul, she's unconscious in her truck. Embry. Paul pushed himself faster, knowing his brothers would take care of the leech. He needed to help his imprint. When the pack burst through the trees, Embry was fighting a dreadlocked leech. Sam and Jared joined the fray while Paul phased back and ran to Bella. Yanking open the door, he stared at her unmoving form. With a shaking hand, he reached out and touched her face, wiping away the blood on her temple. Bella? He could hear her heart beating steadily as he checked her over for other injuries, but found none. Taking her gently in his arms, he pulled her from the truck and took off running for Emily's house. Embry, Sam and Jared ripped the leech to shreds and burned all the pieces. While Sam and Jared watched the flames until the end, Embry checked Bella's truck and got it running again. It had minimal damage, despite hitting a tree and a vampire. Once everything was taken care of, the three of them drove her truck to the res. Paul placed Bella on Emily and Sam's guest bed. Emily handed him a cloth to clean up the cut on her head and left him alone with her. She was all too familiar with the way a wolf whose mate was hurt behaved and knew she needed to keep her distance. He wiped away the blood from her superficial wound, but covered it with a bandage anyway. "Bella, come on, open those beautiful eyes for me." Bella moaned and turned her head toward his voice. "Paul? I'm here, baby." Her eyes shot open. "Laurent. Is that the vampire?" When she nodded, he was quick to reassure her. "We got him, it's okay." He came out of nowhere, knocking the truck into a tree. I knew I was no match for him, so when he tried to get in the truck I moved to the other door to get out, but hit my head on the door frame trying to open it. Figures I would make myself bleed with a vamp around. Paul smirked at her and pulled her into his arms. "You scared the shit out of me." "I'm sorry." She wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face to his neck and inhaling his scent. "Don't be sorry." He pulled back and looked in her eyes. "Just keep yourself safe." She smiled. "I'll try. I may need your help with that." She bit her lip and looked down, before looking at him from behind her lashes. "You think you're up for it?" Paul gently pulled her chin up. "Forever, baby." He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. He ran his tongue along her bottom lip and Bella opened her mouth to allow him inside. Their tongues massaged each other until oxygen became necessary. Breaking apart, they touched foreheads, both breathing heavy. A knock on the door startled her, making him smile. "Dinner is ready, guys." "We'll be right there, Sam." Paul kissed her lips once more and helped her off the bed. The pair of them walked back to the living room and joined the pack and imprints for Thanksgiving dinner. They had no idea trouble was closer than they would like. Bella walked out of the office with a bounce in her step, happy that for the first time in months something went the way she wanted. She jumped in her truck and drove to the station to talk to her dad. Walking past the desk sergeant, she knocked on the chief's door. "Come in." Bella poked her head around the side of the door. "Hi, Daddy." Charlie looked up and smiled at his daughter. "Well, how'd it go?" She smiled and sat down in front of his desk. "I have enough credits and Principal Green said he can have the test ready for me to take a couple days before winter break. I should know before school ends for the year." "So you'll be a graduate before Christmas?" "Yeah. Are you still okay with this?" Bella needed to be in La Push more often for her safety and school was the one place the pack couldn't protect her. "You know it means I won't participate in graduation or go to prom, right?" "I know, Bells. As long as it makes you happy. Besides, you went to prom last year and you're just as clumsy on the dance floor as I am," he chuckled. Bella laughed, probably more. Standing up, she looked down at her father. "I appreciate this, Dad. I'm gonna head down to La Push and tell Paul. I'll see you at Billy's later, right?" "Yeah, now get out of here." She left the station and pointed her truck toward La Push, heading for Sam and Emily's. She knew she had a wolf on her tail and felt well protected. 20 minutes later, she pulled up in front of Sam's and watched as Paul ran out of the house. "What are you doing here? Don't you have school?" He helped her out of the truck. "Hello to you too." She grinned at her boyfriend. Paul smirked. "Sorry, baby." He pressed his lips to hers and then led her into the house. "To answer your question, I'm done with school." "What do you mean, sis?" Sam asked. Bella smiled. "I mean I spoke with the principal today and I have enough credits to take my exit exams now. I have 2 weeks to study, I'll take the tests and I'll be a graduate by Christmas." "That's great, Bells," Sam started. "But why?" Bella sat down at the table and smiled as Emily handed her a glass of tea. "I need to be on the res as much as possible. Laurent whispered to me that she was coming and you're still picking up a scent around my house. If I'm right, It would be better if I were here and my scent intermixed with yours. Okay, but what about graduation and prom? Bella, you don't want to miss those. She looked at Paul with a soft smile. I don't care about prom. Edward forced me to go last year and I hated every minute of it. As far as graduation, Charlie knows and is fine with my decision. He and I have talked about it a lot this last week. Why didn't you say anything to us? Emily wondered, looking at Paul. I wanted to wait until I knew it was possible. Bella traced the wood grain on the table while she gathered her thoughts. Look, she started as she looked up. I'm scared. When I met up with James thinking he had my mom, I was running on pure adrenaline. All I could think about was saving her. That was also when I thought Edward was my soulmate and I wanted to be like him. Now, it's different. I don't want to be a vampire and I have someone else to live for. She looked at Paul. I know you guys can protect me, but I need to be on the res. She didn't even realize she was crying until Paul reached out and ran his thumbs under her eyes, collecting her tears. Sweetheart, we will protect you, he promised. There's gonna be more of us soon. What? Sam spoke from where he had been sitting silently listening to Bella's confession. Jacob is close to phasing and I don't think Quill will be far behind him. Charlie and I are having dinner at the Blacks tonight. Should we go? Embry chuckled. Yes. Once Jake finds out about you and Lahote, he's sure to phase. Embry. Emily looked at him in shock. That's putting Bella in danger. He's right, Emily. Sam grinned. Bella, just make sure if you tell him about Paul you guys are outside. We'll be there keeping an eye out. Okay. There's something else. Bella bit her lip. Billy was planning to tell Dad the truth tonight. What? All three of them shouted. Any response she would have said was stopped thanks to Jared's howl. Stay here, was shouted over shoulders as the three of them ran out to phase and see what was wrong. I'm on her trail. Jay, stay on her, bro. P, we're coming. E. Embry, loop around and meet up with Jared. Paul, with me. Let's see if we can't box her in and kill this bitch. S. Embry caught up to Jared and the pair of them herded her toward Sam and Paul. With a growl, Paul leapt at her, managing to get a piece of her clothing while Sam got some of her hair. She still managed to evade them and ran toward the cliff, jumping into the water and disappearing. Damn it, P, we'll get her, Paul. Jay, the three of them ran back to Sam's while Jared carried on his patrol. They phased as they broke the trees and saw the girls had left them some shorts on the porch. They pulled them on and went inside. Sam went directly over to Emily, pulling her in his arms and kissing from her scars to her lips. Paul grabbed Bella and placed his forehead to hers, breathing in her scent before he pressed his lips to hers. You didn't get her, did you? Paul shook his head. No, we'll get her, baby, I promise. Bella nodded. I need to get to Billy's. I'll see what I can do about getting Jake outside. Be careful, please. Paul traced her cheek with his fingers. If anything happened to you. She touched her fingers to his lips. I'll be fine. With one last kiss, she walked out the door to join her dad for dinner. Dinner went fine with Charlie announcing how proud he was of his daughter and her early graduation. They laughed, while Billy and Charlie talked about fishing trips they wanted to take, Jake and Bella looking on in horror. Dad, you know I'm not going fishing with you guys, right? Jake told Billy. Yeah, me either. We figured as much, kids. Jacob, have you shown Bella the completed rabbit? You finished it? Bella was shocked. She didn't think he had all the parts he needed. Yeah, come check it out, Bells. Bella followed Jake to his garage, a place she knew she'd spent a lot of time the last time she lived this life. Now things were different. She just hoped he wasn't still harboring a crush on her. Paul stood with Sam and Embry in the tree line, listening as Jacob talked to Bella about his car. They could also hear Billy in the house telling Charlie the legends. Jesus, Sam, this is crazy. Are we even sure he's gonna phase? Sam put his hand on Paul's shoulder. Billy said he's showing all the signs. Stop worrying, Paul. Jake would never hurt her. She's all he talked about when she first moved back. Paul growled, so my girl is in the garage with a potential new wolf harboring a crush. Great. Relax. Sam ordered. Bella smiled at Jacob as she once again moved out from under his arm. Finally, he wanted to know what was going on. He'd always been affectionate with her. Okay, Bells, Jake started. You've never pushed me away this much when we've hung out before. I've always put my arm around you or held your hand. What's up? Bella sighed, it was now or never. Jake, let's get some fresh air. She walked out of the garage, Jacob hot on her heels. Damn it, Bella, wait. He ran up to her and grabbed her arm, yanking her around to face him. Ow, Jake. Let me go. Bella tried to shake him off. No, Bella. Tell me what is going on with you. Bella managed to get her arm free and rubbed the sore spot while she answered him. I just think it means something different to you than it does to me. Besides, it's not appropriate. What's that supposed to mean? I have a boyfriend, Jake. So you holding my hand or putting your arm around me is not a good idea. Jake looked at her as if she had slapped him. Who? Bella noticed he was shaking and took a step back, looking in the direction where she could feel Paul. Jake, I don't think. Who? Jacob yelled with a growl. Bella? Paul shouted as he and the others ran toward her. Isabella Marie Swan, Charlie hollered at the same time. Bella looked in her father's direction just as Jacob phased, his large paw catching her arm as his claw ran down her flesh, right through the scar James left when he bit her. Fuck, Bella cried, cradling her injured arm as Sam and Embry phased to help with Jacob. Paul reached her at the same time as Charlie. Let me see. Paul gently took her arm, inspecting the wound. We need to get it cleaned up and call Sue. I think you need stitches, does it hurt? Bella nodded and looked up at him. My arm feels like it's on fire. You dated a vampire, Bells? Charlie asked, not taking his eyes off the three wolves before him. Bella rolled her eyes. Yes, Dad, and my boyfriend is a shape-shifting werewolf. Can we discuss this while Paul fixes my arm? She turned her head when Jake whined at her. I'm sorry, Jake. If you'll listen to Sam he'll explain. He whined again, moving toward her, but stopping at a barking sound from Sam. I'll be fine. Paul will take care of me. I can't believe I hurt her. JB, she's fine, Jake. Jacob, I need you to pay attention. Jacob lay down and listened as Sam explained everything about them being protectors, even about imprinting. He felt his heart break when he learned Paul had imprinted on Bella. He knew he had no chance, especially after watching all of Sam and Embry's memories of the two of them together. I'm sorry, Jake. Embry nudged his nose into his friend's side in a show of support and affection. So, how do I phase back? JB, think human. It's easier if you think about something that makes you happy, Ha. Bella made me happy. JB. Think about your dad or something. Take your time, Jake. We're here for you. The three of them lay there until Jake was suddenly flesh and bone, not fur. Whoa, that felt weird. Sam and Embry phased back, quickly pulling on the shorts they had around their ankles. Embry ran into the Black's house to get Jake some clothes, quickly running back out. Sue is stitching up Bella's arm. You okay, Jake? I'm good. Jacob pulled the shorts on his body and walked toward his house. Where are you going? Sam questioned. In my house. Let him in, Sam, Paul bellowed from inside. The three of them walked in and stood in the kitchen as Sue finished stitching up Bella's arm. She had 3 long gashes running from her elbow to the top of her right hand. We need to talk to old Quill about this mark, Bella. It's oozing something that looks silver. Sue clipped the last stitch and ran some antibiotic ointment down the wound. Could there still be venom in it? Maybe. Sue wrapped gauze around her arm, securing it with tape. Okay, now what hand do you write with? This one, Bella told her. Is that gonna be a problem? Shouldn't be. Try wiggling your fingers. Bella wiggled and flexed her fingers, feeling a slight tugging sensation from the stitches. It pulls a bit, but I should be fine. I just have to take a test in a couple weeks. I should be fine by then. I'm so sorry, Bella. Jacob looked at her with sadness plain on his face. Jake, you didn't mean to. If Dad hadn't yelled my name, I would have been looking at you and I would have moved. It was an accident. She got up and hugged her best friend. Paul growling behind her. Shut it, I'm gonna hug my friend. Turning to look at him, besides, I think his wolf needed my forgiveness too. Paul nodded, I'm sure he did, baby, but my wolf doesn't like you being so close to a new pup. If anyone cares, I have questions for my daughter and all you boys. Charlie broke in. I'll put on some coffee, Sue offered as everyone moved into the living room. Sam stood by the window, while Paul and Bella settled on the couch, his arm wrapped around her. Jake and Embry sprawled on the floor, with Charlie taking up the armchair across from his daughter. "You dated a vampire?" Bella nodded and Charlie took a deep breath. "Did you know he was one?" "Yes, Dad." Bella held up her hand when he would have interrupted. "Just let me explain, okay?" He nodded and she began her tale of how she met the Cullens and everything that happened since. She even explained Phoenix and the fact a vampire was now hunting her for revenge. "Is this why you want to graduate early?" She nodded. "It's part of it." Looking at Paul, he smiled and pressed his lips to her temple. "Did Billy explain everything?" "You mean that you're Paul's imprint?" "Yeah." She looked at her dad straight on. "When we're apart, the pull is almost, well, it takes my breath away, so I can only imagine what it's like for him. I need to be on the res as much as possible. Now, I know I'm 18 and can make my own choices, but I want to talk to you about moving down here." "Alright, Miss Swan, you'll have 3 hours to complete the exam. Once you've finished you may go home for the day." Bella nodded, bent over the test and got to work. She had spent the last 2 weeks studying and getting help from the pack. She was exhausted, but ready. At the end of her 3 hours, Bella double-checked her test paper before turning it into Principal Green. She walked out of the school building heading for her truck. She smiled when she saw Paul leaning against the door. Hey, baby." He grabbed her by the waist and lifted her in his arms. When her head was level with his, he pressed his lips to hers, groaning when she tangled her tongue with his. Breaking away when they needed to breathe, he grinned down at her. "What are you doing here?" "Well," he said as he set her back on her feet, "I'm taking you to lunch and then I thought we could do some Christmas shopping." "Paul, it's 5 days till Christmas. What do you need to get?" "As a matter of fact, I need to get something for your dad and for you." Bella smiled up at him. "Honey, you don't have to get me anything." "Good thing I wasn't planning to spend a lot then, right?" Paul chuckled at the look on her face as he opened the door to her truck. Bella smiled at him and decided to let him have his way. She was already getting her gift. Charlie had agreed to let her move to the res, on the condition she wait until after Christmas. He also didn't want her moving in with Paul right away. While most of her belongings would be boxed up and stored at his place, Bella would be moving into Sam and Emily's guest room. When Sam had offered it, Charlie jumped at the solution. It was planned for Bella to be completely moved by the day after Christmas. "You're awfully quiet over there," Paul commented as he reached for her hand. They had spent the last few hours shopping in Port Angeles. Bella smiled and wrapped her fingers around his. "Just thinking." "What about, baby?" She looked over at him as he drove, admiring the line of his jaw and the russet color of his skin. She thought he was the best-looking man she'd ever seen. "How much my life has changed in the last 3 months." Pulling her truck into his driveway, he looked over at her. "Good changes?" She smiled. Opening her door, she jumped down and headed up his front stairs, walking right into his house. "Bella?" Paul found her in his kitchen getting something for them to drink. "Bella, what's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" 3 months ago, all I wanted in the world was to become a vampire and spend the rest of my existence with Edward." She turned to look at him. "Now, all I want in this world is to be with you. To have a family with you. To love you and have you love me. I want to be safe and I know you're the only person who can make and keep me that way." Paul placed his hands on her cheeks and stared into her eyes. "I will always keep you safe and protected. Just as I will always love you." Leaning down, he pressed his lips softly to hers. When he pulled back, "I do love you, Bella. I don't know when it happened, but I feel it." She felt a tear slip down her cheek at his confession. She thought she'd loved Edward, but what she felt for Paul overshadowed that tenfold. Grasping his wrists with her hands, "I love you, too." A howl went up just as their lips would have met again. Paul turned to the door and then back to Bella. "Go," she kissed him quickly. "I'll go to Emily's." Paul yanked his shirt over his head and kicked off his shoes. He was unbuttoning his pants as he headed for the door, pulling them down and phasing once they hit the floor. He barked at her to go and was gone before she could blink. Bella ran into Emily's and found Kim pacing the floor while Emily sat on the couch in shock. Bella sat before her friend and grasped her hands. "What is it?" "Quill phased this morning, but Sam went ahead and gave Paul the time off to spend with you. Jacob was patrolling when he heard some pained howls and sent up a signal. You guys were on your way, but hadn't gotten back yet." "Emily, what happened?" Bella gave her a shake. Uncle Harry had a heart attack when Leah and Seth got into an argument and both phased in their living room. Oh my God. Bella covered her mouth. What was the howl we just heard? The redhead got a little too close to the res, Kim answered. Bella turned to her. How's Harry, Kim? I don't think it's good, Bella. Bella hung her head as tears leaked from her eyes. Harry had been her father's friend for as long as she could remember. She knew he would be devastated if he died. Taking a deep breath, she wiped her eyes and stood up. Let's get cooking, Emily. We'll need to feed our wolves and I think we should make something for the clear waters. I think that's a great idea, Bella, Kim agreed. The two of them coaxed Emily off the couch and into the kitchen where she woodenly began helping make a meal. After about 10 minutes she finally started to talk. She's gonna hate me more now than she already does. Who, Leah? Yeah, I know you guys know the story. We do, Kim started. But everything works out for a reason, right? Bella finished. I suppose. Emily whispered. They worked in silence until the boys slowly filed into the house, Leah and Seth trailing behind them. Jared immediately went to Kim. Sam doing the same with Emily. Bella walked to Paul and placed her hand on his cheek, looking into his eyes. Is he? Not yet. Paul whispered, pulling her to him and breathing in her scent. Let's all sit down and eat something. Jake, you'll take patrol with Paul. Embry, you can go with Seth and Leah to the hospital. I'll stay on the res and watch the imprints. Quill and Jared, you need to get some sleep, you'll be on dawn patrol. Sam, would you mind if I went to the hospital as well? Bella asked, knowing the sensitivity of the situation required the alpha's permission. Sam smiled, I'm fine with it as long as Paul is. Just make sure you stick with Embry, Seth and Leah. Don't leave without one of them, Paul requested, knowing she would be safe with the three of them. I promise. She stood up and carried her plate to the kitchen. Do you guys want a ride? Walking back to the dining room, she smiled gently at Seth and Leah. Sure, thanks, Bella. Paul stood and followed the four of them to the door. He stopped with Bella at the driver's side door and leaned down to kiss her. Stay with your dad and the others, please, baby. I will. She reached up to caress his cheek. I love you. Love you, too. With one last kiss, she got in her truck and drove them to the hospital. Christmas was a celebration the whole pack was looking forward to. It had been a rough few days leading up to it, but things had finally come together. Harry had made it through heart surgery and seemed to be on the mend. Although he wasn't to be released until after Christmas, everyone was in high spirits. Bella? Emily hollered from the kitchen. She walked around the corner. What's up? Can you mash those potatoes while I get the sweet potato casserole going? Bella smiled and pulled her hair up on top of her head. Sure will. Grabbing the mixer, milk, butter and salt, she got to work. You ladies are killing this in there. Jake commented as he walked to the fridge. Everything smells so good. Is my dad here yet? No, he said he was stopping to get mine. Jake turned his ear to the door. Actually, I hear the cruiser now. Paul? Bella smiled as his head poked around the corner. Can you go help Dad? He should have the last load of my stuff along with the presents. Instead of answering, he grabs Jake and the two of them head outside. Charlie looks up, sees the two of them and smiles. He had been worried when he found out Paul had imprinted on Bella. Knowing how Jake had always felt about her, he couldn't help but like Paul though. For all the trouble he'd been in before his phasing, he was a good guy and he respected his daughter. Charlie, what have you got? Bella's stuff is in the trunk, presents in the back. I figure I can drop her stuff at yours on my way home later. He was under no illusion his daughter wouldn't be spending nights with her boyfriend. Sounds good. Paul took the packages Charlie handed him and turned to see Jake getting Billy out of the car. Walking back into the house, he placed the packages under the tree and looked for his mate, not seeing her in the living room or kitchen. Lifting his nose, he found her in the backyard having what appeared to be a very serious conversation with Sam. Sam, you're the alpha, surely you can convince him to move down here. Sam looked at her with questioning eyes. Bella, your dad is safe. What is the urgency? I don't know. Victoria is still running around, that's worrisome. But I have this weird feeling in my gut that something is coming. Sensing her distress, Paul walked out onto the porch and gathered her in his arms. He shared a look with Sam, both wondering what else could be coming at them. Bella's concerns about Charlie's safety were proven true. On the day Harry was released from the hospital, he had gone to help Sue get him settled in and make sure his friend was comfortable, also taking the time to visit. Bella and Paul were supposed to join him for dinner, so they all left the res together. When the three of them arrived at the Swan House, Paul immediately tensed, scenting several vampires. "Stay in the car, both of you," he ordered as he handed Bella his phone. "Call the pack, baby." Bella did as she was told, while watching her boyfriend walk inside her father's house. By the time the rest of the pack arrived, minus Leah and Seth who were sitting with their parents, Paul was fighting the urge to phase. Bella desperately wanted to go to him, but didn't want another accident to happen. "Bella, Charlie, you should check to see if anything is salvageable," Sam suggested. "Paul, go run it off and then you can come back." Paul looked at Bella, she looked into his eyes, hoping hers told him all he needed to hear. With a nod, he ran into the forest and allowed his wolf out. With a growl he took off running. Bella and Charlie followed Sam into the house and what greeted their eyes was a shock. Couch cushions were on the floor, scratches through the fabric. Pictures were knocked off the wall and there were deep scratches embedded in the paint. The whole house looked like Freddy Krueger had paid them a visit. "Holy," Charlie muttered as he followed Bella upstairs. "Check your room, Dad." Bella walked into her room and saw the same kind of damage as downstairs. Since she had been moving down to the res, there wasn't much left to destroy, so it didn't take her long to see what was damaged. "Sam." Bella stopped in front of her hamper. "What's up, sis?" "Some of my clothes are missing." Paul leapt through the open window. "What do you mean your clothes are missing?" "I mean I had some dirty stuff left here, and now half of it is gone. Who would steal dirty clothes?" Paul walked over and wrapped his arms around her. "I followed 3 unknown vamp scents to the highway. Maybe they have it?" "For what, though?" Embry wanted to know. Charlie walked into the room then. "I'm not waiting to find out." He pulled a suitcase behind him. "Billy is gonna let me stay at his place until I find something on the res. I'm not waiting here to become part of a vampire buffet." Bella sagged against Paul in relief. She was worried she wouldn't be able to convince her dad to move for his safety. With Sam and Embry's help, the 5 of them packed up what they could and loaded it into Bella's truck before heading for the safety of the reservation. Although the wolves could smell them, Bella and Charlie had no idea they were being watched by vampires. Bella lay in her bed at Sam's and stared at the ceiling. The spot next to her was long cold, which meant Paul was either on patrol or working at Billy's with the rest of the pack. It was decided after the new year that Charlie would move permanently in with Billy, since he needed continuous care and Jacob was constantly patrolling. The pack was currently expanding the twins' room, making it so Charlie was comfortable. Bella stared at her arm, knowing it was time to take the stitches out and talk to old Quill about her scar. She wondered why there was still venom in it and whether it belonged to James or had Edward left some behind on purpose. Crawling out of bed, Bella went to the bathroom and showered before getting ready for her day. Once she was dressed she went to the kitchen, grabbed a cup of coffee and went out to find Emily on the deck with her own cup. "Morning," Bella sat beside her friend on the steps. "Morning." Emily looked over at Bella, at the bandage on her arm. "You need to get those out." Looking down, she nodded. "Yeah, I'm gonna go over to Sue's in a minute. I need to make sure Leah is there first. You know Paul and Sam won't let me wander on my own. You're his little sister, Bells. Sam loves you, all of us do. I love all of you guys, too. I also need to talk to old Quill." Emily nodded. "The venom. It's time to find out why it's there and if he can get it out." "Sue, how much venom was leaking out of my arm?" The older woman looked away from where she was cutting the stitches out of Bella's arm. "It was like a slow trickle, Bella, so I'm sure there is plenty in there." Bella watched Sue's movements, not feeling anything but a strange pulling sensation as the stitches were removed. "Leah, can you go to old Quill's with me?" "Sure, Bells." Leah smiled at her friend. It hadn't been easy for her, especially with the closeness Bella shared with Emily, but she had slowly let her in and over the last week the pair of them had gotten closer. "You better text Paul and let him know though." Bella shook her head. "Overprotective dog." "Hey," Leah protested, "we aren't dogs." Yeah. Bella grumbled as she pulled out her phone. "Hey, just wanted you to know Leah is taking me to old Quill about the venom in my wrist." Did you want to be there? B. By the time Sue pulled out the last stitch, Paul still hadn't responded. Leah knew he wasn't on patrol, so they walked to Billy's before going to Old Quill's. They watched for a minute as Paul, Embry, Quill, Sam and Jared finished framing up the addition. After the last nail was hammered in place, Bella let loose a wolf whistle. My, those are some good-looking men over there. Bella grinned, knowing what Paul would do. Leah laughed, you're gonna get it for that one. Baby, I better be the only man you're looking at. Paul growled before stalking over to her. I can look, I just can't. Her words were cut off as Paul slanted his mouth over hers, pushing his tongue past her lips and stroking hers. Bella moaned and suddenly wished they were completely alone. Paul broke their kiss, but moved his lips along her skin to her ear. Soon, baby. He knew exactly where her thoughts had gone, because his were right in line. He and his wolf needed to claim their mate. Bella smiled at him and placed one more kiss on his lips. Did you get my text? No. Paul pulled his phone from his pocket to check it. Yes, I'm going with you. Leah, you can? He trailed off when he noticed Leah and Quill staring at each other with glazed looks in their eyes. Sam? Sam looked up and was stunned. Well, hell. Jared, Embry, I need you two to stay here and keep working. I'm gonna take Leah and Quill to talk to Harry and Sue. Bella? Leah's voice trembled. Bella looked up at Paul before removing herself from his arms and walking to her friend. Leah, it's okay. Did we? Bella smiled. Yeah. You and Quill just imprinted on each other. Go with Sam, he and your parents can answer all your questions. Bella, he's so much younger than me. Plus he's hyper and a jokester. Paul chuckled behind them. I think he'll be good for you, Leah. You're so serious and tough, I think his goofiness will balance you like you will him. Just go talk to your father, Lee. Belle encouraged, pushing the wolf toward Sam and Quill. When the three of them left, she looked at Paul. Let's go find out about this shit in my arm. Old Quill opened the door, greeting Bella and Paul with a smile. Young wolf and his mate. To what do I owe this visit? We have some questions for you, sir. Come in. The old man stepped aside and allowed them to enter his home. After closing the door, he led them to his private study and indicated they should sit down. Now, tell me what's on your minds. Bella took a deep breath. When Jacob phased that first night and opened my arm with his claws, venom leaked out of the scar on my wrist. I see. Old Quill leaned forward and reached out with his hand. May I? She held out her arm to him and he gently inspected the old bite. Covering it with his other hand, he began whispering some quileute over top of it. Bella and Paul watched his movements, wondering what he was doing. Finally, he sat up straight and let go of her wrist. Well, there is venom in there, but it was left there on purpose. Excuse me, Paul growled. Settle, young wolf. The venom was left by the vampire so he could find you wherever you went. Your imprint will not block him, so it must be removed or danger will always be near. How do we remove it? Bella asked quietly. We need to cut the venom out, young one. He stood and walked to a cabinet on the other side of the room. After pulling out several vials and a weird bowl, he turned to them. I will need to call the other elders and we will perform the ritual tonight. After agreeing to meet at the tribal center with the rest of the pack, Paul and Bella walked to his place, both in a daze. Why would he do this? Bella asked, not really expecting an answer. Think about it, Bella. This way he can get you back, better yet, get your blood back. They walked into his house and he led her to the couch. You told me yourself. You were his singer. If your blood is addictive to him, then he would want to know where you are at all times. If my imprinting on you hasn't blocked that, then you're in more danger than just the redhead. Oh, God, Paul. He's gonna come back the minute they take care of this. Bella could feel herself begin to shake. She had never been afraid of Edward before, but knowing this scared the hell out of her. Paul grasped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. I will protect you, baby. No one, not the redhead and definitely not your psycho ex, is gonna take you from me. You're mine, Bella, and I love you. Bella looked in his eyes and saw the truth in his words, but she needed more. Show me, she whispered. Paul picked her up and carried her up the stairs to his bedroom. He lay her on his bed and then followed, laying half on half off her. He was nervous. He'd had sex with his fair share of women, But he'd never made love to anyone. He'd certainly never been someone's first before either. Bella could sense his nerves and reached her hand up to his face. "Look at me, Paul." When his eyes met hers, she smiled. "I'm nervous too, but only because I want to be good for you. Baby, this is going to be a new experience for both of us. I just want our first time to be special. It will be because we love each other." Stroking her thumb over his lower lip, "Kiss me, Paul, and make me yours." Paul leaned down slowly and pressed his lips to hers, kissing first her upper then her lower lip, before deepening the kiss. He let his tongue tangle with hers as Bella's hands ran through his hair. When they needed to breathe, he pulled his mouth from hers, kissing down her neck to the junction of her shoulder. Bella moaned as he nipped and sucked at her skin. She felt his hand run down the length of her torso, to the bottom of her sweater before pushing it up. She jolted when his warm hand brushed over the skin of her stomach and over her lace-covered breast. Sitting up, she pulled her sweater over her head and tossed it to the floor. Paul groaned at the sight of her breasts covered in black lace. "Jesus," he leaned over and attached his lips to her cloth-covered nipple. "Paul," Bella moaned, taking his head in her hands and pressing him closer. Paul reached behind her and deftly unclasped her bra, gently pulling it from her shoulders as his eyes met hers. Without breaking his stare, he cupped her breasts in his warm hands, his thumbs sweeping across the hardening peaks, causing her to groan. Bella ran her hands down the planes of his chest, feeling his muscles ripple at her touch. She shuddered when she felt his lips close around her exposed nipple, gently sucking and biting her flesh. Leaving her breasts after giving both the same attention, he kissed his way down her belly, stopping where her jeans rested at her hips. Looking up at her, she nodded her permission and he grasped her pants and yanked them as well as her panties from her body. Paul growled when the smell of her arousal greeted his nose, unencumbered by her clothing. "You smell amazing, baby." Parting her legs gently, he ran his nose through her slit, peeking his tongue out to have a taste. You taste even better." "Paul, please." Bella didn't know what she was begging for, but she wanted more. Her body was on fire from his touch. "You like that, Bella?" Looking into her eyes, he smirked. "You're gonna love this then," he murmured before burying his face between her thighs. Bella was writhing on the bed from the sensations his tongue was causing. She could feel herself growing wetter and felt something building in her, waiting to explode. "Paul," she moaned as the pressure built. "Come on, baby, let go." Paul bit her clit and Bella felt like she was flying as a gush of liquid poured out of her and white lights glowed behind her eyelids. "Paul." He kept licking and sucking at her until she came down from her orgasm. Removing his mouth, he swiped a hand over his face before moving up her body, kicking off his shorts as he went. He pressed his lips to hers as he settled between her legs. Bella could feel his cock, hard and heavy, pressing against her and tried to move so he would slip inside. "Are you ready?" Paul asked, staring into her eyes. "Please, baby, make me yours." Shifting, Paul lined his weeping cock up with her entrance and slowly pressed forward. "I love you, Bella," before he pushed all the way inside her. Oh, Bella had never felt so full or complete as she did in that moment. Shifting her hips, she gave Paul permission to move. Paul pulled out slowly and pressed back in. She was so tight and warm around him, he didn't think he would last long. He kept his strokes long and slow, wanting to make it good for Bella since it was her first time. He should have known it wouldn't be enough for her. "Paul, faster, harder." She moaned against his shoulder, her teeth nipping at his flesh. "Fuck," Paul pulled back and slammed into her. "Is this what you want?" "Yes," Bella screamed. "Fuck, Paul, I'm close. Come for me, baby." Paul thrust into her at a rapid pace, feeling his own release approaching. Reaching between them, he pinched her clit, causing her to tighten around him like a vice. "Paul," she came around him, bringing forth his own orgasm. "Fuck, Bella," he roared as he released his seed deep inside her. After the tremors subsided, Paul collapsed, rolling to the side so as not to crush her. He kissed her swollen lips over and over, trying to express his love for her. When their breathing returned to normal, he brushed her sweaty hair from her face. "Are you okay?" Looking into his eyes, she smiled. "I'm perfect. I love you, Paul." Pressing a kiss to her head, "I love you, too." Paul stood in the doorway of his bedroom and stared at his sleeping mate. He hated to wake her, but it was time to get to the tribal center. Walking forward, he sat on the edge of the bed and ran his fingers through her dark tresses. He watched as she slowly blinked open her eyes. When Bella saw Paul leaning over her, she smiled. "Hi," she stretched. "Hey, if you want to shower before we go, you need to get up." "Okay." She sat up, holding the sheet to her naked chest. "Can I borrow a t-shirt? If they're going to cut my wrist, I prefer not to ruin my sweater with the blood." "Yeah, I'll leave it on the bed." Standing, he walked to his dresser, trying not to see his naked girlfriend walk to the adjoining bathroom. He felt his dick stir to life when she started the water and heard her close the curtain once she was inside. "Fuck," he muttered and adjusted himself in his pants. After throwing a shirt on the bed for her and grabbing one for himself, he sprinted out of the room. He was sure she was sore and he needed to let her rest, even though he was dying to claim her again. Bella stepped out of the shower and, after drying off, walked to the drawer Paul had for her and grabbed some clean underwear. After she was dressed and her hair was mostly dried, she found Paul in the kitchen. Walking up behind him, she wrapped her arms around his waist. "You know, you could have joined me." Paul turned and leaned his forehead against hers. "I almost did. Next time." He kissed her, deepening it in a promise of more. "We need to go." Nodding, she gripped his hand in hers and followed him out the door. Looking up, she saw the whole pack gathered in his front yard. Sam walked forward and placed his hands on her shoulders. "We're with you, sister." Bella looked at the alpha. "You know, as soon as it's gone, he'll be back, right? And if he tries anything, we will protect you." Bella nodded. "Let's go." Sam fell into step with Bella and Paul. Jacob, Emily, Kim and Jared followed behind them, with Seth, Embry, Quill and Leah bringing up the rear. They entered the tribal center and found all the elders, including Harry, as well as Charlie and Sue. "Ah, right on time, young one. Follow us." Old Quill led the way out the back door into what appeared to be a courtyard. There was already a fire going, with a small tray beside it. The tray held a knife, a bowl and what looked like matches. Following the elder, Bella never let go of Paul. He could feel her shaking and pulled her to his side in comfort. "You're okay, baby. I'll be here the whole time." Old Quill turned and looked at the pack and imprints. "Isabella, you and your wolf need to be here." He indicated a space beside him. "Alpha, you and the rest of the pack and imprints need to spread around the fire and sit." Once everyone was in place, Old Quill spoke again. "Young one, you have unwittingly been poisoned by a vampire. He has left his venom within your skin as a tracking device. We must get it out. Wolf, come forward with your mate and sit with her in your lap." Once Paul and Bella were seated, Old Quill took her arm in his hand as Billy and Harry began chanting in Quileute. Charlie watched everything with rapt attention, praying this worked and his daughter would be permanently free of the Cullens. "This will hurt, Isabella." Bella gripped Paul's hand as Old Quill took the knife and cut into the flesh on her wrist, removing the entire bite. Tears poured down her cheeks and she couldn't contain her cry of pain. Paul tightened his grip around her waist, wishing he could take the pain from her. "Almost done." Old Quill held the bowl under Bella's arm, catching some blood. When he had enough, he dropped the flesh he had removed into the bowl and lit a match. Everyone gathered watched as it sparked and a purple plume rose from the bowl, accompanied by a sickly sweet smell which had all the wolves scrunching their noses. "Sue," Old Quill nodded and stepped away from Bella and Paul. Sue knelt before them and began cleaning Bella's wound. Pulling the skin together, she began stitching where the imprint of James and Edward's teeth used to be. "The cleansing ritual is now complete. Thank you for coming." Old Quill turned and left the tribal ground. "Seth, Embry, you're on patrol. Everyone else, pack meeting," Sam ordered. He walked over to where Bella still sat and ran a hand down her hair. "Come to the house and rest." Bella nodded, joining the rest of the pack as they all left the tribal center. As she walked, she couldn't help feeling a little more free. Alice gasped and grabbed Jasper's arm in shock. The rest of the Cullens looked at her, knowing she would explain. Edward, who had recently rejoined the family, banged the lid to his piano closed. "Bella's future just disappeared. I can't see her anymore." "I thought we left her behind?" Rosalie groused. "She can't be dead, Alice." "I don't know, Edward. You wouldn't let me look for her to see if she was sick or in danger." All I know is that her entire future just went black. Well then I guess we're all going to Forks. If my daughter is dead, I want to know. Esme told them and Carlisle nodded in agreement. Bella groaned and rolled over, bumping her sore wrist on Paul's arm, causing her to whimper in pain and him to wake up. Are you okay? Yeah, she sighed and tried not to rub her wrist. My wrist is sore. Paul gently grabbed her arm. You know I can heal that. How? My saliva has healing properties. Well, my wolf's does. He can lick the wound and it'll be better in minutes. And I could meet your wolf? He looked at her, stunned. None of the other imprints wanted to meet their wolves. They were afraid of them. He thought Bella would have been too after what happened with Jake. You really want to? Bella placed her hand on his cheek. Paul, he's part of you. Paul smiled and leaned in to kiss her lips softly. When he pulled back, he sat up and pulled her with him. Once they were outside he made her stand back. Bella watched as his body started shaking, almost vibrating, as he shifted into a silver wolf. Wow, she whispered. Paul lay down on his belly so as not to frighten her. He whined when she made to move closer to him. Please, Bella reached her hand out. Paul, I know you won't hurt me. Golden eyes watched her every movement. When her hand gently landed on his head, his eyes closed. Bella ran her fingers through his fur, gliding her hand along his body. Paul lay there and almost purred at her soft touch. Once Bella was done with her inspection, she moved back in front of him and sat down. Meeting his eyes, she began unwrapping the bandage from around her wrist. I can't believe I'm doing this, she muttered. Paul gave a yip and she looked at him. Yeah. Let's just get it over with. I would like to cuddle with my human mate. Although, you aren't nearly as scary as I was led to believe. More like an overgrown dog. Paul growled, causing Bella to giggle. Inching forward, Paul opened his mouth and allowed his tongue to run across Bella's wounded wrist several times. The tingling on her skin was instant and when she looked down, she saw a small scar, though the stitches were still there. That's amazing. I told you. Paul picked her up in his arms and carried her into the house. We'll have Emily cut the stitches out in the morning. Looking into his eyes, she smiled. Thank you. She kissed his jaw and wrapped her arms around his neck. I love you. Paul lay her on the bed and wrapped himself around her. I love you, too. I don't understand why we're driving. We could have run there faster than this. Edward whined from the backseat of Carlisle's car. Carlisle sighed, because, Edward, if Bella has indeed passed, we don't need to make a spectacle of ourselves. We will be there for Charlie and her mother. Edward ignored him and closed his eyes, concentrating on Bella. He hadn't told his family, but he had left his venom as a tracker under James's bite. He sat silently and tried to find her. After 10 minutes, his eyes flashed open as he realized he couldn't sense her. Hurry up, Carlisle. Bella rolled over and felt the cold side of the bed where Paul had lay before he left on patrol. Lifting her arm, she traced the barely there scar and smiled. Wondering how Edward would feel when he found out he couldn't track her, she felt nothing but relief. The sun slanting across her face from the window caused her to turn her head. Sitting up, she threw off the covers, suddenly wanting to be on the beach. After showering and dressing, she slipped out of Sam and Emily's house, walking to First Beach. Once she reached a quiet spot, Bella sank down onto the sand and stared out over the waves. She realized that when she was feeling contemplative she always ended up looking at the water. Even when she was in Phoenix, she sat on the bank of a creek which ran near her house. The wind blew her hair around, but she made no move to push it back or pull it up. She sat there thinking about how her life had changed since she drank that potion of Sam's. She couldn't imagine anymore a world or life without Paul. He had become the center of her universe in the short time they had been together. And Sam and Jared meant more to her than she imagined they could. They were the brothers she always wanted. Emily and Leah were her sisters in ways that Alice never could have been. Kim was even someone she looked forward to seeing, although they weren't as close due to her fear of the wolves. She wasn't sure how long she sat staring at the water, but she smiled when she felt his heat wrap around her. What are you doing out here all alone, baby? Leaning back into his chest, she rested her head against his shoulder. Thinking about how different my life is without the Cullens. All in good ways, I hope. Paul tightens his arms around her, pressing a kiss to her temple. In the best ways, She ran her fingers up his arms, smiling when she felt him shudder. When I was with Edward, he controlled everything I did. What I ate, wore, even my friends. I was suffocating and I didn't even know it, Paul. She sighed and snuggled further into him as the sun began setting against the horizon. With Edward the first never truly belonged. It was like when I was with him I was trying to swim against the ever-changing tides, never quite reaching the shore. With the pack, I just fit. Like the ebb and flow of the river, I'm just cruising along. I'm not fighting the current or trying to keep myself afloat. I don't need to. Your love, and the love of the pack, is the raft which is gonna get me to safety. Turning in the sand and getting on her knees, she put her hands on his cheeks. I love you, more than I ever thought possible. I can't wait to. Paul. The pair of them turned to see who had yelled and watched as Jacob ran in human form as fast as possible toward where they sat. Paul picked Bella up and stood them up, placing himself slightly in front of her, protecting her even from his pack brother. What is it? Jacob held his hand up as he caught his breath. Embry and I were on patrol. We had just run the treaty line by the Cullen place when we smelled them. Bella gasped and covered her mouth. They're back. Bella sat at Emily's kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of hot coffee. Paul was starting to freak out a little at her actions. She hadn't spoken since they got back from the beach. She hadn't moved since she sat down. Jake, call Charlie and get him down here. In fact, have Billy come too, Sam ordered. What the pack didn't know was Bella wasn't shutting down. She was pissed. She expected Edward and perhaps even Alice to show back up, but not the rest of them. She was not going to tolerate any bullshit from them. She knew she needed to say something, to reassure Paul she was okay. But she needed the anger. She didn't want to be the pushover the Cullens no doubt expected her to still be. I'm fine, guys. She finally looked up and met their concerned gazes. Really, I'm fine. I'm pissed off and I'm trying to hold on to it. Paul watched as something flashed in her eyes and sighed in relief. Don't do that to me again, baby. Sorry. She stood up and walked to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. What's the plan here, Sam? Jake asked what the rest of the pack was wondering. Before Sam could answer, Bella did. The plan is, we wait. I know Edward, when he goes to our old house. She looked at her dad. He won't be able to smell us, or at least it will only be faint. When he can't track me either, he will do everything he can to find me and I'm gonna let him. What? Paul yelled and began shaking. Bella turned around and looked at her mate, placing her hands on his cheeks. Look at me, baby. I'm right here. Paul, look at me. Paul's eyes finally met hers, but she could see the ring around them indicating his wolf was still very much present. I know you're not happy, Silver, but I had to do this my way. The wolf receded and Paul glared down at her. If you get hurt in any way, I am holding you responsible. Deal. Bella pressed her lips to his and turned to the room. Now, here's my plan. For the next half hour Bella outlined her idea for how to deal with not only the Cullens, but Victoria as well. I don't like this, Isabella Marie. Charlie stared at his daughter. Unfortunately, my analytical cop brain believes that it will work. Nice to know I inherited something good from one parent, she grinned at her dad. Well, it's the only plan we have. Paul? Sam stood before the wolf who stared at Bella with his arms crossed. Finally, he shifted his eyes to his alpha. If possible, I want a wolf on her at all times. Preferably myself, or you or Jared. Sam nodded and looked at Jared, who nodded as well. Done. Jake, you stay with Charlie. So when do we put all this into action? Embry wanted to know. Tomorrow. Bella grinned and put her hands on her hips. I have a feeling Dad is gonna get a visitor at the station. How do you figure, sis? Jared walked over to lean on the wall next to her. Think about it. We live on the res and our house has been rented out. Any trace of our scent is gonna be muted, if they find it at all. I haven't been to the high school since a week before Christmas and it's rained a lot. We've removed his venom from my wrist so he can't find me, so what do you think he'll do? Jared grinned and nodded. He's gonna ask Daddy where his daughter is. Exactly. CT Charlie sat at his desk going over some paperwork he'd been neglecting. He sighed and looked over at Jake. You alright, Chief? Do you think Bella is right? Do you think that redhead is turning people into vampires? Jake shrugged. I don't know, Charlie. This Bella, the confident, self-assured woman we know now, isn't who I remember. She looks at things differently than she did when she was with the leech. Charlie nodded and would have said more, but the phone on his desk rang. Swan. Okay, send them back. He replaced the phone on the cradle. Showtime. A light knock on the door caused Jake to rise. Opening the door, he stepped aside as Carlisle and Esme Cullen walked across the threshold. Dr. Cullen. I heard you left town. What can I do for you? Charlie indicated for them to sit. Actually, Charlie, we're here to offer you whatever help we can. Charlie looked confused and glanced up at Jake. Help with what? Esme broke down. Oh, Charlie, we heard about Bella. We're so sorry for your loss. Jake had to bite his lip when Charlie took on a look of surprise. Otherwise he would have cracked up. Who knew the chief was such a good actor? My loss? I'm afraid I don't follow, Mrs. Cullen. Then he gave them a wide-eyed stare. Wait, do you think Bella is dead? Well, Bella is fine. After your son ripped her out of her chest by telling her she wasn't good enough for him, she applied for early graduation. She graduated just after Christmas and has started over. The Cullens looked at each other and then back at Charlie. I'm sorry, Charlie, we'll have to check our information more carefully from now on. We'll let you get back to work. Jake held his finger up to Charlie to indicate not to say anything. He waited until he heard the whispers fade away, along with the Cullens' car. Once he was sure, he nodded. So, they thought she was dead, that's why they came back. Charlie sat back in his chair. And it looks like Bella was right about the seer not being able to see the pack. C.T. Carlisle and Esme walked into the house and headed straight for the dining room where everyone was waiting. Edward immediately read their thoughts and was incensed. How could you, Edward? Esme was angry. What did you do? Rosalie growled. He told Bella she wasn't good enough for him, that he didn't love her and he was tired of living a lie. Then he left her in the forest. She was lost for hours. Alice told the family and then hung her head. What? Emmett had Edward up against the wall by his throat. You made us leave, but you broke her. I wanted to keep her safe. Edward gasped around Emmett's squeezing hand. Let him go, Emmett. Carlisle ordered. Emmett dropped Edward, who sat on the floor gasping, sit down. Once the family was seated once more, Carlisle looked around and stared at his two gifted children. Alice, did you know what Edward was going to do? Yes, she kept her head down. Jasper, as her mate I will leave her punishment to you. However you are cut off from the Cullen funds until further notice, he sighed. Alice gasped. Carlisle, you can't. Jasper glared at her and shook his head. As for you, Edward, your punishment will be decided later, once we find Bella. Esme cleared her throat. Bella is fine. She applied for early graduation and has begun college. Carlisle, her scent isn't around her house. Where is she? Edward whined. I didn't ask, Edward. Well, we need to find her, Alice commented. Why, Alice? Jasper looked at her, placing his hand on her shoulder. What have you seen? Victoria, she's creating an army. Billy rolled into his kitchen where his phone was ringing. Hello. Chief Black, this is Carlisle Cullen. Billy looked at Charlie and Jacob. What can I do for you? Well, I'm hoping that you have shifters in La Push. We have some information about a potential newborn problem. I will pass this on to the alpha of the pack. If he wants to meet, he will contact you. Billy didn't allow Carlisle to say anything else and hung up the phone. Billy turned to his son. Get to Sam's. Jake nodded and ran out the back door, slipping off his shorts and tying them to his ankle before letting out his wolf. Paul and Embry were on patrol and saw in his thoughts that contact had been made. Once he arrived at Sam's he phased back and got dressed. Sam and the others walked out on the porch. What's up? Dr. Cullen called Dad. Said there was a possible newborn problem. What the hell does that mean? It means, Bella sighed as she walked up to the house. Victoria knows she can't get to me alone and is turning others into vampires. Okay, but why call them newborns? Quill wanted to know. Let's go inside and talk about this, Emily suggested, hugging her arms around herself to ward off the cold February air. Once everyone was inside, the pack around the table, Bella followed Emily into the kitchen. While the two of them worked to prepare a meal, Bella talked. New vampires are called newborns. They are incredibly strong because their own human blood still runs through their systems. How do you know this, Bells? Jake wanted to know. I listen, Jake. Wiping her hands on a towel, She handed the baking dish filled with lasagna to Emily to put in the oven. When I was with Edward, I would ask questions. He hated answering them because he didn't want me to hear about the horrors of his world. Jasper would later explain. I also overheard conversations between Em and Jasper. So how do we fight them? Leah asked as she leaned back in her chair. I don't know, Lee. Bella leaned a hip against the counter. This isn't something I had counted on. I can handle the Cullens, their bullshit doesn't affect me anymore. But this is unknown to me. The oven beeped and the conversation was over. Bella walked out on the porch and sat on the swing, wrapping her arms around herself. For all her bravado, she was scared. Dealing with the Cullens and their abandonment along with Edward's betrayal were nothing compared to beings that were out to kill her. She felt the tears on her cheeks before she even realized she was crying. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. When she drank that potion, she was supposed to be happy. There weren't supposed to be more, even worse, threats hanging over her. She tried to be strong, but she was scared and she hated it. CT Sam walked away from the door where he'd been watching Bella. The rest of the pack had already gone home, but he knew she needed Paul. Stepping out the front door, he stepped out of his shorts and jumped off the porch, landing on 4 paws. Paul, Bella needs you. I'll take the rest of your patrol. What's wrong? Sam showed Paul the conversation they'd had during dinner and then what he'd observed with Bella. I'm on my way. Paul raced to Sam's house, his concern for Bella overriding everything. He slid to a stop in front of Sam's house 10 minutes later and phased, barely getting his pants zipped before he was in the house and grabbing his mate. Bella wrapped her arms around his shoulders, burying her face in his neck. Take me home, Paul. Lifting her up, he carried her bridal style out of the house and toward his. I got you, baby. He pressed his lips to her temple. Paul carried her in the house and up the stairs to their bedroom. He lay her down on the bed and spooned in behind her, running his fingers through her hair. He kept silent, knowing she would talk when she was ready. He didn't have to wait long. I can handle the fucking Cullens coming back. I can even handle my psychotic ex thinking he owns me. Rolling over, she ran her fingers over his cheeks and lips. What I can't handle is something happening to you. You're my life, Paul. My very happiness is wrapped up in you and I am terrified. Sweetheart, nothing is going to happen to me. Paul leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. You don't know that, Paul. Newborns aren't like the other leeches you've come across. They are stronger, more lethal. Bella, I am not going to leave you. He kissed her nose. We are gonna grow old together, with our children and grandchildren surrounding us. Promise, she whispered. I promise. Leaning in, he pressed his lips to hers, wasting no time in deepening it. Their passion for each other was quickly ignited and Paul slowly removed her clothes, kissing every inch of skin as it was revealed to him. Paul, Bella moaned, running her hands down his back. Groaning at the feel of her hands on his body, he moved up her form. He stopped, taking one of her pert nipples into his mouth and sucking on it before he gently bit down. Fuck Paul, please. What, baby? Paul moved up to her head and kissed her lips, pushing his tongue into her mouth. Bella moaned into his mouth and brought her legs up to wrap around his waist, pressing her heels into his ass and raising her hips to get him where she wanted him, breaking away for breath. I need you. Paul reached down and lined himself up with her entrance and with one swift thrust, was seated fully inside her, both of them moaning at being joined as one. Paul set a slow pace, pulling out almost completely and then pushing back in. Bella had her hands on his cheeks, staring into his eyes, while Paul held onto her shoulders, never breaking her stare. He could see her emotions plainly in her eyes, as she could read the love in his. Needing to be in control, she pushed on his shoulder and he rolled them, never breaking their connection. Bella swiveled her hips, getting into a rhythm, her clit rubbing against his pelvis, bringing her closer to the edge. Paul loved the sight of her above him. Her cheeks were flushed, head thrown back and hair ghosting over his thighs as she rode him, taking what she needed from him. As the pleasure built, Paul sat up and wrapped his arms around her, sucking on the skin between her shoulder and her neck. Paul, Bella moaned as he felt her walls quiver around him. Come for me, baby. Bella cried out as her orgasm took over, causing her movements to become jerky. Paul gripped her hips and was soon shooting his seed deep into her womb as he too cried out his pleasure. The pair of them panted, but never moved their position, instead staring into each other's eyes. "I'm never leaving you, Bella." Bella didn't say anything, just hugged him closer to her and nuzzled her face into his neck. They would have stayed wrapped around each other all night, but Sam called and explained they were meeting the Cullens at the treaty line at midnight. Sam slammed down the phone after talking with the head leech. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "What's going on, Sam?" Emily asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "The leeches want a meeting. Tonight. You have to call Bella, Sam. She needs to be there." Sam sighed and nodded his head. "I know. Do you think she's ready to face them?" Emily ducked under his arm, placed her hands on his cheeks and smiled at him. "She's ready to face the Cullens. It's the new threat that scares her." Nodding, Sam kissed her. "Thanks, Em." He grabbed the phone and called Paul. Afterward he called everyone else, including Billy and Charlie, who both agreed they were going to be there as well. Bella and Paul met up with the rest of the pack at Sam's. Billy and Charlie were also there, seated comfortably and bundled up in a side-by-side. Bella grinned. "You two warm enough? Toasty as can be, Bells." Billy grinned. "How is this gonna work, Sam?" Charlie turned to the alpha, as did the others. Sam stood up and addressed the entire group. "Jacob and I will go in the lead. Paul, I want you and Jared on our flanks. Bella, you will ride in on Embry, with Quill, Seth and Lead guarding you. Charlie, you drive that thing ahead of Embry and the others." He paced his front porch. "I'm not sure what the leeches want, but I have a feeling it's knowledge on Bella's whereabouts. Bella, I don't want you coming any closer to the front of the group until either I say something, or you feel it necessary. The leeches are gonna need to share their info on the newborns as well." "You got it, Sam. Make sure you guard your thoughts. Edward will know everything you're thinking," Bella warned. Once all the wolves were phased, Paul licked Bella's cheek and yipped at her. "I love you, too." She ran her fingers through his fur and down his muzzle. Turning away from him, Embry lowered his body so Bella could climb on his back. Once she was settled and had a good grip, he rose and followed Leah, Seth and Quill to the meeting point. They took their time, knowing Bella needed to be safe. Sam, Jacob, Paul and Jared arrived at the treaty line, making sure they guarded their thoughts. The rumble of the side-by-side carrying Billy and Charlie startled the vampires who were standing 6 feet away. "Thank you for coming," Carlisle began. "Is this all of you?" "There are a few more, but they will be along," Charlie responded as he set up Billy in his wheelchair next to Jacob. "Chief Swan, I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm sure you didn't, Dr. Cullen." Charlie stood next to Sam with his arms crossed. "Where is Bella?" Edward growled. "Now, you listen here, boy. You may be a vampire, but I won't hesitate to shoot you. It may not hurt you, but it may shock you enough to slow you down." Sam growled and stepped slightly forward. "The wolves want to know why we called this meeting," Edward translated blandly. "Are you going to phase so that we may speak?" Carlisle wanted to know. "It depends on what you have to tell us," Edward translated again. "What we have to say pertains to Bella and we would like to tell her if at all possible." Just as Carlisle finished speaking, 4 more wolves entered the clearing, Bella astride one of them. "Bella," Alice squealed and bounced on her toes. "I've missed you." "I can't say the same, Alice." Embry lowered himself to allow her to slide off. "Bella, how have you been, my dear daughter?" Esme smiled. Bella stopped walking and stood next to Paul. Her eyebrows rose in her forehead at Esme's words. "Daughter, I'm sorry." She pressed her finger to her ear and wiggled it as if clearing a clog. "I must be hearing things. You see where I come from, people who consider you a daughter or a sister or even a friend, don't abandon them. They at least have the decency to say goodbye. They don't allow their sons to take them into the forest and dump them, in the most cruel, horrible and unnecessary manner, leaving them there to freeze to death. So no, Esme, I am not your daughter." "What are you talking about, Bella?" Jasper stepped forward. "Oh, I think you know, Jasper. Your wife must have had a vision of how Edward broke up with me. But I'm betting there are other things you don't know about Golden Boy Cullen." "Like what?" Emmett also stepped forward, his anger at Edward still strong. Bella gripped Paul's fur in order to keep herself in check. She hadn't realized how angry she was until she saw them all face to face. "I'm guessing you've been to the old house in Forks and haven't been able to find us, right?" "Right. Your scent is almost non-existent there. That's because we haven't lived there since December. Bella let go of Paul and began to pace. You see, Sam found me the night Edward left me in the forest. I was cold, wet and incoherent. If not for him and Jared, I would have wallowed in self-induced isolation, but they wouldn't let me. Through them, I met Paul, who is my true soulmate. You're an imprint? Carlyle asked. Yes. Bella continued pacing. It wasn't until Jacob phased that we discovered Edward's treachery. You may want to hold him so he doesn't run, she suggested to Emmett and Jasper. You see, unfortunately I was a little too close to Jake and my dad yelled my name just as he phased the first time. His paw caught my arm and scratched it up. In doing so, he split open the bite scar left behind by James. Imagine our surprise when venom began to leak from it. You didn't? Carlyle growled at his son. She's mine? I had to be able to find her, Edward yelled, causing the pack to growl. Bella stopped and faced her ex with her hands on her hips. How's it working, Edward? She cocked her head to the side. That's not even the worst of it. The reason Dad and I had to move is because something broke into our house. Freddy Kruegered the walls and stole my clothes. Also, Victoria has been hunting for me. Still think she wasn't a threat, Eddie? When he would have lunged at her, Paul leapt forward, just as Jasper and Emmett grabbed him and held him in stronger grips. We removed your venom, you son of a bitch. What were you gonna do? Come back and drain me? If we're being honest here, I think that's a violation of the treaty. What do you think, Billy? I do believe you're right, Bells. They agreed not to drink from humans, which he did when he sucked out the other one's venom. They also agreed not to harm humans, which obviously Edward planned to do later, by doing the former. So, yes, I do believe that qualifies as a violation. Bella shrugged at the Cullens. I guess you can thank Edward for the fact that all of your lives are forfeit. Now, wait a minute. Carlyle argued. Perhaps we can work out a deal? What are you suggesting? Sam had to phase human in order to be a part of the negotiations. Finally, a solution was suggested, but Sam and Billy decided it would need to be discussed with the entire council. For now, the lives of the Cullens were on hold. Now, as to the vision Alice had. Jasper explained about the newborns and said training would be needed so the wolves would be able to fight them. It was agreed that in 2 days' time, they would reconvene at the treaty line, announcing the council's decision. The Cullens excused themselves and ran away. I'm proud of you, Bells. Charlie commented. You didn't back down and you stood up for yourself. Thanks, Dad. She hugged her father before walking to her wolf. Let's go home. We can meet the council later. Paul lowered himself so Bella could climb on and carried her home. While all of her things weren't there yet, no one was under any illusions on where Bella really lived. She hadn't stayed at Emily and Sam's since Valentine's Day. Paul phased and followed her in the house, watching as she bypassed the living room and headed straight for the bathroom. He heard the shower turn on and the sound of her clothes hitting the floor before the shower curtain scraped closed. He hadn't bothered to pull on his shorts, so he walked in and joined her under the hot spray. You okay, baby? He grabbed the shampoo and began washing her hair. I'm fine, but I realized a few things tonight, she groaned as he scrubbed her scalp. What? Paul turned her to face him so he could rinse the suds from her hair. Bella grasped his waist in order to maintain her balance while he washed her clean. Jasper, Emmett and Rosalie had no idea what Edward was up to. I think you're right. But can we not talk about the bloodsuckers while we're naked in the shower? Bella giggled. Sorry, honey. Paul laughed with her and they finished their shower before heading to bed, curling around each other. The sunlight streamed across Bella's face, waking her from a deep sleep. She felt for Paul, but found the bed empty except for a piece of paper. On patrol. Love you. She smiled and put the note in her nightstand. Getting up, she went to the dresser and grabbed a bra and a pair of matching panties. She pulled on her jeans and one of Paul's t-shirts. She walked to the kitchen while pulling her hair up into a messy bun. After pouring a cup of coffee, she grabbed a banana and went to sit on the front porch. Her mind was flying a mile a minute. There was so much going on in her life a normal person would get dizzy. She had the Victoria and newborn threat hanging over her head and now the Cullens. She knew Jasper, Emmett and Rosalie were completely innocent, but the jury was out on Carlyle and Esme. In her opinion, Alice was just as guilty as Edward because she could see what he was up to. The fact that Edward had saved her life didn't negate the fact he had hidden his venom in her skin. You look like you're thinking heavy thoughts. Bella smiled and looked up at her pseudo-brother, seeing Jared with him. You guys want some coffee? Sure, sis. The two men followed her inside and sat down. Want to tell us what's on your mind? She knew she didn't have to hide anything from them, and whatever she told them could be shown to the pack and Paul later. She outlined her thoughts about Edward and Alice to them. I know he saved my life when James bit me, but when he left his venom behind he was doing it for a sinister purpose. That in itself is unforgivable in my opinion. I know 3 of them are innocent, but I can't be sure about Carlisle or Esme. All of them are guilty of abandoning me, but if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have you all or Paul. I can't be angry at them for that anymore. Okay, so let's focus on what we know. Jared started. Edward left the venom behind so he would always know where you were. You're his singer, he will always want your blood. The warrior vamp tried to tell the rest that the redhead would come after you, but they didn't heed his warning. They willfully, at least on the part of Edward and Alice, put you in danger, Sam added. Okay, so what do we do? Bella asked them. We can't let them, get away with this, but we need their help so you can beat this army that's coming for me. As far as I'm concerned, Edward broke the treaty as did Alice. But you're right, we need them. Sam hated to depend on leeches, but they were going up against something unknown. I think we need to call the council together now. Bella smiled at her brothers. CT, do you have any idea what you've done? Carlisle held Edward against the wall with his hand wrapped around his throat. Bella is mine. Her blood calls to me, he choked out. In case you didn't notice, Eddie, Rosalie sneered. Bella's blood doesn't smell as sweet as it used to. Any idea why, or are you too stupid to notice? Edward snarled at Rosalie. Guys, I don't think. Shut up, Mary Alice. You're in a lot of trouble, Jasper said brusquely to his mate. Alice took on a submissive pose and kept silent. Let me go, Edward growled. Carlisle let go of Edward, but didn't let him get very far from him. Edward, your actions are despicable. Bella was good to this family and we left her because you said it was dangerous. When the real danger was you. Carlisle never raised his voice, but he was pissed. When the wolves contact us, we are going to do everything they want. You have jeopardized the lives of this entire family. The council was assembled in the tribal center, Billy at the head of the table. To his left sat Sue Clearwater and Old Quill. To his right was Ryan Cameron, Jared's dad, and David Littlesea. Billy had just finished telling them all what took place the night before and his theories. The pack was all assembled, minus Quill and Seth, who were on patrol. Bella was seated between Sam and Paul, with her dad right behind her. Bella, what are you thinking? Ryan asked. He, as well as the others, was very fond of the young woman. Bella sighed and leaned forward. I know what Edward did broke the treaty, Alice as well. Unfortunately, I think we need them for the time being. I agree, Old Quill spoke up. I don't like it and I think both Edward and Alice need to be destroyed, but we will delay that until after the coming battle. As to the other Cullens, while not guilty in the same way, their complacency makes them just as culpable. I think after this is over, the treaty will be voided and the Cullens need to remove themselves from the state of Washington forever. To say the Cullens were unhappy with the tribal council's decision was an understatement. Edward was livid, even though the blame lay at his feet. The rest of the family was resigned and hoped they could change the council's mind through their assistance with Victoria. Again, Jasper yelled from the sidelines as he watched the wolves and vampires he had paired up spar in the ways he had taught them. He was hoping he could save his mate, but Alice needed to learn from her actions. She slowly was, especially after her introduction to the Major who had quickly brought her to heel. Stop thinking about her like that, Edward suddenly yelled from across the field. Everything stopped and all the wolves phased, pulling shorts onto their now human forms. If you don't like it, stay the fuck out of my head, Paul growled. What's going on? Emmett wondered. This cretin is thinking about Bella in a sexual manner. Edward complained with a whine. Jesus, Edward, he's her mate. Of course he's thinking of her like that. Rosalie growled. I told you her blood didn't smell the same anymore. Did you think she was still the virginal little Bella you left behind? With a man like that? Emmett growled at her comment. Sorry, Em. Sam glared at the Cullen fool. If you want a mind to read, bloodsucker, take a look at mine. Sam began remembering what Bella looked like the night Edward left her. Stop it. Really, why are you doing this to my son? Esme cried as she ran to comfort Edward, who had thrown his hands over his ears. Oh, please. Leah finally couldn't hold back her disdain for the leeches. Your son violated the trust of the girl he claimed was his mate. Your son had every intention of coming back here and killing that same girl. She suffered for months from the way he left her traumatized, broken and alone in a cold forest. What he is going through now, she spat, is nothing compared to what she went through. Not to mention the fact that the bitch who claimed to be her best friend and sister knew exactly what he was planning. Quill piped in, backing up his imprint. Jared and Jake had a firm grip on Paul, keeping him from tearing the Cullens apart. Look, Sam finally stepped in. Tensions are running high. I think we need to call it a night and take a breather for a couple of days. We will meet here again on Saturday. Agreed. Carlisle nodded and they ran off toward their home. Go home. Sam ordered, turning around to face his pack. Pack meeting at Paul's tomorrow. Paul, I'll send Emily over to help Bella. I know she has midterms coming up. Paul nodded and took off running toward his and Bella's house. When he walked in, he found her asleep on the couch, her computer on the coffee table and books all around her. Paul leaned over and began picking up her books and carefully closed her computer. He lifted her in his arms and carried her up the stairs to their room, placing her gently on the bed. After removing her leggings and socks, he went to the bathroom to take a quick shower, needing to get the leech stink off. Bella woke up, noticing she was in bed without Paul. She heard the shower running and smiled. Sitting up, she removed the rest of her clothes and quietly entered the bathroom. Opening the shower curtain, she slid her hands along his back and around his waist. I thought you were asleep," he moaned, feeling her naked body against his. "I got cold. You usually keep me warm." Turning around, Paul brought his mouth down to hers. When she felt his tongue on her lip, she opened, moaning when his tongue touched hers. When they broke away, he kissed down her neck and sucked on the place at the juncture. Paul, his name came out breathlessly as she gave him more access to her neck and shoulder. "I need you, baby." Taking his head in her hands, she stared into his eyes. "You have me, Paul. You have all of me." Lifting her up by the back of her thighs, he helped her wrap his legs around him as he carried her out of the shower and into the bedroom. They fell onto the bed and Paul wasted no time, slowly pushing into her, both moaning at being joined. He thrust slowly, staring into her eyes and reaffirming their connection. When he felt her tighten around him, however, the wolf refused to be held back. He pulled out of her and flipped her onto her stomach and quickly entered her once more. "Oh, fuck," Bella cried, pushing back into him with each of his hard thrusts. "God, Bella, you feel so good around me, baby. So warm, thrust, and wet." He thrust into her over and over again. Paul so close. Paul grabbed her hair and pulled her flush against him as he continued moving in and out of her. "Come for me, baby." Bella's walls clamped down him and he came with a roar as he sank his teeth into the flesh at the juncture of her neck and shoulder. Bella shuddered as another orgasm ripped through her. They collapsed to the bed, as Paul licked his mark on her neck clean, healing it over. "Paul," she murmured breathlessly. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to mark you." Paul rolled to his back, placing his arm over his eyes. Bella turned to him and placed her hand on his chest. "Honey, look at me." He peeked an eye out at her. "I know what the marking is. Emily explained it to me a long time ago." "What?" He moved his arm from his eyes. "I saw her mark and I asked questions." She placed her hand on his cheek. "Paul, I've been expecting it for the last few days." "What do you mean, honey? With all the time you've been spending around the Cullens and I'm sure Edward's ridiculousness, I'm sure Silver reached his wit's end. He, and you, needed to make sure I am yours and no one can take me away." She leaned forward and kissed him softly. "I am yours and I love you, both of you." She lay her head on his chest and snuggled closer to her mate. "I love you, Bella." He fell asleep with her in his arms. Bella walked down the stairs, while pulling her hair on top of her head. She walked to the front door and smiled when she saw Emily. "Hey, I hear there's a meeting here today." Emily shut the door behind her. "Yeah. Sam sent me over to help you get food ready since you have studying to do. I have a lot of things in the freezer." I never know who's going to show up on any given day. Bella laughed and pulled some disposable casserole dishes out of the freezer. Preheat the oven for me and we can throw these in. They set the casseroles on the warming oven and Emily began preparing some snacks and salads, while Bella grabbed her books and computer. An hour later, Paul entered the house having finished his patrol and sniffed. Something smells amazing. He walked over to Bella and kissed his mark, while she patted his head without turning from her books. How long has she been at it, Em? About an hour. Sam said he'll be here soon. Paul commented as he grabbed a sandwich off a tray on the counter. There was a knock on the door and the pack flowed in, followed by Billy. Hey, Bells. Jacob bounded over to her. He was about to give her a hug when he saw her neck. What the fuck is that? The Cullens, minus Alice and Jasper, sat watching Edward pace the living room, mumbling to himself. Every once in a while they would hear Bella's name and something about him getting her back. You better not be thinking of doing anything stupid, Edward. Emmett warned. The wolves have given you a stay of execution for now. If you try to do something to Bella, they won't hesitate. Those wolves aren't touching my son. Esme spat through gritted teeth. Esme, Edward did wrong and he continues to do wrong. Why are you standing up for him? Why aren't you, Rosalie? Esme stood and faced her daughter. He is your brother. Yes, and a week ago you called Bella your daughter. She also stood and faced Esme. What, because she's pissed and doesn't look at us the same way that instantly changes your relationship? I loved that girl and she threw it in my face. We abandoned her. Emmett stood in front of his mate. Sit down, Carlisle roared, moving to intercept Edward who was taking advantage of their argument and trying to slip away. This is doing no good. This family is falling apart. He suddenly realized that Jasper had been controlling their emotions to keep things from being so terrible. He turned to face his family and decided it was time to lay down the law. Here's how this is going to work. We are going to help the pack destroy Victoria and her newborns and then we are going to vacate the area, hopefully all of us. We are done in Forks permanently. But Carlisle, no, Edward, Carlisle interrupted. If you survive this, we are gone. You're to stay away from Bella. CT, what the fuck is that? Jacob saw Bella's neck and was suddenly incensed. He couldn't figure out why though. He knew Bella was Paul's imprint, he accepted that. He only saw her as a sister now, but something about her scent was grating at his wolf. Back away from my mate, Black. Paul growled. Bella stood from her chair and slowly backed away from Jacob. It wasn't until she hit the counter that he noticed her. Jake stalked toward her, a menacing look on his face. Paul? Bella's voice was laced with fear. I know, baby. Jared is right behind you. Bella stared at her friend, wide-eyed. She knew she shouldn't, but she couldn't take her eyes from his. What's the matter, Bella? Afraid of the big bad wolf? Jacob sneered. No, I'm afraid of the stupid dick who used to be my best friend. Bella watched his eyes change to the wolf's with her challenge. What's your plan here, Jake? You're in a house full of your pack brothers. I'm a marked imprint. Do you honestly think you're above tribal law? Attack me and they're free to take you out. Jacob, son, listen to her. Billy pleaded. Sam, do something. Emily hissed. Jacob, back down now. Sam ordered. Bella watched as he tried to shake off the alpha order, but finally gave into it and slumped to the floor. She sagged and would have hit the floor, but Jared caught her and swung her up in his arms, carrying her to Paul, who nuzzled into her neck as he walked them to the couch. What the hell was that? Jacob looked at Bella, curled on Paul's lap and shook his head. I don't know, Dad. It was the wolf. I know Bella is Paul's, but for some reason when I saw that mark on her, he went nuts. He looked at his father. I was trying to fight him, but I couldn't. Bella kissed Paul and snuggled further into his embrace. I think you guys need to go phase and talk to his wolf. And make sure you make a run of the perimeter. Check for any vamp scents. I agree, Sam nodded. Outside. Paul kissed Bella once more and followed his pack outside. Once they were all in wolf form, Paul sat on his haunches and let Sam direct this meeting. Jake? We weren't going after her to hurt her. We smelled something and saw the mark. We were trying to make sure it was completed correctly. When we smelled her fear, it changed. Then she challenged us, JB. She met your eyes, J. Yes. We couldn't back down until our alpha told us to, JB. Paul, go get Bella. I want to see how his wolf acts now. He ran inside the house. Babe, we need you to come out and talk to Jake's wolf. Bella shrugged and moved away from the counter where she was mixing something in a bowl. Can you finish this for me? Sure. Emily took the spoon and got to work. Bella followed Paul outside and stood to the side as he phased. When she arrived, Paul sat at the edge of the circle, while Sam phased and explained what they were going to do. Bella, sit down in the center here. I want all of us to sniff you and see what is different that set off Jake's wolf. I'm gonna let him go first, okay? Sure, Sam. Bella sat completely still, while first Jake and then the others came to her, sniffing her, paying particular attention to Paul's mark. Paul growled, trying to stay back, but his instincts were telling him to protect his mate. I'm okay, Silver. Finally their inspection was done. Jared left to run a perimeter check while Paul went over to smell his mate, licking his mark. Once he was satisfied his brother's scents were gone, he phased and led his mate inside. Jared came back in, just as Bella and Paul were sitting down with their plates. I caught something, Sam. It was fresh and not one of the Cullens. This was on the res. Sam took a bite from his plate, trying to show a calm he wasn't feeling. Just one? I think so. Jared sat down with his own food. Probably ought to send Embry though, he's got the best nose. Sam looked at Embry, who nodded. Finish your dinner first, Embry. Bella sighed. You should probably take someone with you. You need to look up into the trees. What are you thinking, Bells? Jared wanted to know. Bella got up and began cleaning up her kitchen. I told you about the Cullens' gifts and what we suspect about Victoria. What if one of the people she has turned has a gift? Jesus, Paul started. We have no way of knowing what we're up against until they actually show up. The next time you guys train with the Cullens, Bella started. I'm going with you. The pack erupted as soon as she finished speaking. Bella stood against the counter and waited until the shouting died down. When the pack realized she was still standing there with her arms crossed, they quieted and sat down. Thanks. Now, as I was saying, she walked to the group and settled herself on Paul's lap. I'm going with you, because I have an idea. I'm gonna use Alice. She outlined the plan she had, and although none of them wanted her around the leeches, they decided it did have merit. After the pack left, Paul and Bella lay in bed. You're not to be alone with her. If you can't have one of the wolves with you, at least let Blondie sit with you. Okay, Bella agreed. Bella was watching the pack spar with the Cullens. After she had watched for about 30 minutes, it was time to implement her plan. Alice, will you come sit with me, please? She said in her normal tone. She could hear the wolves growl and looked across the field. Stop it. Alice danced her way over to where Bella was sitting, excited to finally be able to talk to her. She didn't see that Bella only wanted information. After seeing the look on Alice's face, Bella remembered her promise to Paul. Rosalie? She called. Would you like to join us? Once the two vampires were seated with her, Rosalie at her side, Bella began. In a gentle voice, one which almost sounded like a hypnotherapist, she spoke to her former friend. Alice, I need you to close your eyes and concentrate. Once she complied, Bella continued. I need you to think about the newborns who are coming. Picture them in your mind. Rosalie and Bella watched as Alice went into a trance-like state. Bella pulled some drawing paper and pencils out of the bag beside her and placed them in Alice's hands. Draw their faces, Alice. She watched as the vampire began furiously scribbling. Take your time. We have all night. Rosalie and Bella watched, fascinated, as piece after piece was filled with images of people who once were human, but were soon coming to kill Bella in a twisted idea of revenge by their maker. When she finally stopped, there were 25 pages. Perfect, Alice. Now, one more thing. Bella picked up the papers and pencil. Which ones have special abilities? She held up the images one by one and Alice told her if they were normal or had a gift. That one, he can control people's reactions. What, like getting mad over something they normally wouldn't? Alice nodded, yeah, it's kind of like impulse control. Can Jasper counteract him? Maybe. Bella nodded and packed up her things. Standing from where she had been sitting on the ground, she whistled. Sam, I got what we need. Let's go. Bella placed her hand on Rosalie's shoulder and gave it a squeeze. Well, at least she tried. Rose patted her hand with a smile. Bella had all 25 pages laid across Sam and Emily's counter and table. She watched as the pack scrutinized every image, memorizing the faces of their enemy. What about powers? Jared asked. Bella walked forward and grabbed 6 pages. These are the ones with gifts, according to Alice. Only one of them would be a potential problem. He also may be the reason Jake went apeshit when he saw Paul's mark on my neck. What do you mean? Jacob asked. Jared and Embry smelled a scent that morning, right? When the pack nodded, she continued. He can affect impulse control. I think he was in the woods, trying to find out how effective his gift would be. The way Jake reacted wasn't him. Were you able to get anything else out of the seer? Paul wanted to know. No, but I think I can get her to concentrate hard enough to see around you guys. Why? What are you thinking? I'm wondering if she can pinpoint exactly where and when they are gonna strike. I can ask. She looked at him. That means I'm gonna have to come with you guys again. You gonna be okay with that? Paul sighed heavily. Look, it's no secret I hate you being around them, but I saw how it was tonight. I know you're okay. Just stay away from Edward. The pack cracked up at his nickname for her ex. No problem. I hate that little shit, Bella grinned. Alright, everyone out. Quill, Jacob, you're on patrol, Sam ordered. Unfortunately, a requirement of Bella's online classes was for her to report to the campus for any and all final exams. Since she had to have a wolf with her at all times, she sat in a car with her brother as Jared drove her to campus. Paul would have gone, but he had patrol and Sam, as Alpha, had to stay on the res. You ready for this, Bells? I've studied so much I better be. I'd like to spend a quiet night with my boyfriend. Between studying, patrols and training, Paul and I have barely seen each other. Jared looked over at her with a soft smile. If it's any consolation, he's feeling the strain too. She looked back at him. I know. Ever since he marked me, I can feel his emotions as if they were my own. They arrived at her school and he wished her luck as he dropped her off at her building and moved to wait in a place he had full view and could see what was coming. Bella took both her finals and was just handing the last one to the professor, when Jared burst through the door. Jared? Are you done? When she nodded, he grabbed her arm. Let's go, pulling her out the door and dragging her with him. We've got a problem. Bella jogged behind him trying to keep up with his long strides. When they got in the car, he started it up and gunned the engine, pulling away from the school. Jared, what's going on? I caught a scent. It's not a Cullen. One of the newborns maybe? Most likely, but I need to get you back on the res. Bella looked at his shaking form. Jared, look at me. She waited until his eyes met hers. Instead of the normal brown eyes, she saw lupine yellow. We're safe for now. You need to calm yourself so the wolf backs down. You can't get me home safely if you phase in the car. Jared took a few deep breaths, his eyes never leaving Bella. She watched as the wolf backed down. Jared blinked, knowing she was right to have stopped them. Paul would have killed him if he'd hurt her. Thanks, sis. Let's get home. Jared stopped his car outside Billy's house, since it was the closest to the line between Forks and La Push. He jumped out of the car, throwing his t-shirt and shoes in the back seat. He was unbuttoning his pants as he walked toward the woods. Hollering over his shoulder at Bella, "Get in the house." Bella let herself into the house and met the eyes of her father and Billy. What's going on, Bells? I don't know. Jared grabbed me from class, said he caught a scent. He ran to the woods and sent me in here. Maybe one of the Cullens? Charlie suggested. Bella shook her head. He said it was unfamiliar. Have you called Paul? No, she told him as she picked up the phone and dialed her boyfriend's number. Bella, thank God, Emily's frantic voice answered. Where's Paul? Ignoring her question, Emily asked one of her own. Where are you, Bella? I'm with my dad and Billy. Emily, what the hell is going on? Jared dropped me off here and ran into the woods. Alice called Sam an hour ago, Emily sighed. The newborns are coming now. Shit. Bella, I really need you here with me. If I send Brady to get you, will you bring your dad and Billy here? Bella could hear the worry and panic in her friend's voice. Yeah, I have Jared's car. Is Colin there too? Yeah, Sam didn't want the pups in the fight, especially since they only phased a week ago. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Bella hung up and looked at her dad and Billy. The newborns are coming. We need to get to Emily's. Our wolf escort will be here in a minute. Then let's get in the car. Charlie strapped his gun belt on and made sure he had extra ammo. He knew it wouldn't stop a vampire, but he needed to be armed for his own sanity. The three of them watched out the window for Brady. When he ran up, they all got to Jared's car as fast as possible. Once Billy was loaded in, Bella got in the driver's seat and sped off. When? Bella asked. Last I heard, the Cullens were in the field and the pack was positioned around it. They are the first line. Jesus, Charlie muttered under his breath. Bella pulled the car to a halt outside Sam's and Brady immediately jumped out. After making sure Billy and Charlie were inside safely, he phased and yipped at Bella to go inside. Taking one step off the porch, she grabbed his muzzle. Staring into his eyes, she spoke to Paul's wolf. You better come back to me. I love you. She turned around and ran inside, shutting the door behind her. What are we cooking, Em? I'm gonna need a distraction. Jared phased and ran into the forest. If Bella had been looking out the window, she would have seen a newborn running right after him. Jared kept running, but as the vamp lunged at him, he flipped over and ripped its head off as his body turned and he landed on his paws. Damn, that was awesome, dude. Where's Bella? P. I left her at Billy's. Jared, get over here and take a spot near the rock formation. The newborns are coming. Jared joined his pack and observed the positions they were all in. He could see from where he was waiting that Paul was twitching. He knew exactly what he was feeling since he had his own imprint. Lucky for him, Kim had gone with her parents to Seattle for the weekend. While the pull was painful, knowing she was safe made it all worth it. The Cullens were standing in a field, waiting for trouble to come. The pack could see Edward staring in the direction of La Push and figured he would try something the minute they were all distracted. They had figured out over the last month how to still communicate with each other, while also keeping him out of their thoughts. A trick Emmett had taught them. Watch him. I wouldn't put it past him to try and get to Bella, P. They were all so in tune with each other, they saw what each other saw. So when they saw Brady look at Sam's house, they knew something was up. Brady, go to Billy's and get Charlie, Billy and Bella. Bring them straight back here, Emily ordered. Brady yipped and they watched him run off. They all saw Bella and the others waiting for him, and when he got there they ran to Jared's car. Paul breathed a little easier when he saw his mate with a wolf. Again, they all watched as he phased back and yipped for Bella to go in the house. Paul growled when she ignored Brady, but settled when she looked right in his eyes. You come back to me, I love you. Paul took a deep breath and got his head back in the game when he saw the door shut behind his imprint. Thanks, pup. P. Prepare yourselves. I hear them. She watched as her changelings ran through the woods, heading toward the source of her agony. She was going to kill the mate of that little mind-reading asshole. Staying in the protection of the trees, she was able to observe her newborns. She hissed as they fought amongst themselves, some losing limbs or heads in the milieu. Riley was supposed to have better control over them. She watched with horror as those smelly wolves started jumping out at her minions, picking them off one by one. The ones that made it away from them continued to where the human scent was. Moving across the branches, she watched as they made it to a clearing, only to be confronted by the Cullens. She looked around but couldn't see the girl. With a growl of frustration she backed away from the fight, leaving all of the newborns to their demise. The sound of breaking twigs and growls greeted the ears of the wolves, just as the sickly sweet stench of leeches arrived. The wolves were primed and ready as the first bunch leapt out of the trees, snarls and venom leaking from their mouths. Now, springing into action, the pack took out the ones they could, leaving the ones who ran to the Cullens. For Paul it was mechanical. Every head that he bit off, every limb that was removed, was all in protection of his mate, the love of his life. Bella was always on the periphery as he did his job as a protector. For Edward, it was a means to an end. He didn't sense Victoria anywhere, so he kept his mind open, listening to the thoughts of the newborns. None knew of her, until he found the one who was considered her right-hand man. He listened and paid attention, ignoring his family and their warnings. He would get to Bella before the redhead. He would kill her first. Riley watched as his minions were destroyed and wondered why Victoria hadn't shown herself. Lifting his nose to the air, he tried to pick out the scent of their target. He knew she wasn't there, but he could sense the direction she was in. fading into the trees. Riley turned and ran in the direction he sensed her. Sam! One of them is heading to the res, Alice shouted as she fought off the newborn who grabbed her. Paul, Leah, go! Sam ordered as he pulled the arm off one who was going for the bigger Cullen. Emmett nodded at Sam and ripped the head off the newborn. He turned and threw the body into the fire Esme had started, but ignored her and went back to fighting. No one noticed that Edward was no longer among them. Bella pulled a tray out of the oven and set it on the counter, her hands shaking with tension and fear. Knowing it was coming was one thing, knowing it was happening was another. Remembering the last time she lived this, she had been running on pure adrenaline. Now things were different. The adrenaline wasn't there, but an overwhelming sense of foreboding and fear covered her in a sheen of sweat. Bella, come sit down, sweetie. Emily coaxed, leading her to the living room. Something is coming, something bad. I know it, Bella confessed. The pack will take care of it and Brady and Colin will warn us if anything comes this way, Emily told her as Charlie handed her a glass of water. They sat around talking, trying not to think about what was going on or the danger the pack was facing. All conversation stopped when a menacing growl sounded from outside. Bella and Emily looked toward the backyard, where they knew Colin was. Billy whispered a prayer in Quileute, while Charlie loaded his Glock and pulled back the slide to chamber a round. He knew it was useless against a vampire, but he hoped it would slow one down if he had to fire. Dad, you know that's useless. It'll probably just ricochet off of one. I know, Bells. I'm thinking it will surprise one at the very least. The growling outside grew and then there was a howl of pain. Emily and Bella looked at each other, both worried about the pups. Bella, a taunting voice came from outside. Come out, Bella. The childlike voice coming from the backyard made Bella giggle. Sorry, she whispered when everyone looked at her. The growls and snarls grew as did the yelps until Bella couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to go out and see what was going on, but was content with looking out the window. What she saw devastated her. Colin was laying on the ground, unmoving, while Brady was fighting two vampires. Oh, no, what is it? Emily walked over and gasped. You don't think he's dead, do you? No, Bella looked at her. If he was, I think he would be human again. What are we gonna do, Bella? The both gasped in horror as Brady was thrown toward the house. He crashed into the side and the door cracked. They were in trouble. Just as Charlie was making his way to the door, ready to provide a distraction, he saw Edward Cullen burst through the trees. What the hell is he doing here? Who? She looked out the window and didn't hesitate. She ran out the door and hovered beside Brady's prone form. Glaring at Edward, what the hell are you doing here? I'll be with you in a minute, my love. First I must dispatch these two. Ignoring him, she knelt beside Brady. Are you okay? Brady nodded his large wolfy head. Is Colin? Another nod. Are there any other wolves on the way? One more nod. Good. Bella stood up and faced Victoria. You should know that he isn't my mate. Of course you are. He wouldn't have killed James otherwise. Bella shook her head. I believe he killed him because James was trying to take my blood from him. I'm Edward Singer. So your death will not affect him? Bella shrugged. Not in the sense that he lost his mate. He'll be more pissed because he lost out on my blood. Before any other words were said, Colin and Brady both jumped up as Leah and Paul burst through the trees. Leah landed on Victoria's male companion, while the young pups grabbed Victoria. Paul was facing off with Edward. You broke the treaty again, Leech. Edward fainted to one side as Paul did the other. I will have her blood, mutt. Bella was helping the other three put the dismembered parts of Victoria and the other in the fire Charlie had started. None of the wolves phased as they watched the standoff between Paul and Edward. She's mine, bloodsucker. You'll never get to her. My pack will destroy you if you try, Your pack will be too late. Edward sneered. We're right here, Paul, and the others are on the way, Bella watched in horror as Edward attacked Paul. She couldn't contain her scream as he attached his arms to his furry torso. When Edward clamped down with his arms, her scream echoed in the silence, sending birds flying away. Paul, no. Paul stared at her with his wolf eyes before they rolled back in his head and he collapsed to the ground. Leah, Brady and Colin were on him before Edward could get to Bella. She ran to where Paul lay, having shifted to his human form, moaning in agony. She turned to the wolves and shouted, "Kill that son of a bitch!" She kneeled beside her boyfriend, fluttering her hands over him, but afraid to touch. "Paul, baby?" "Blah," he groaned. "Love you. I love you, too. You're gonna be fine. You can't leave me, Paul. Please, I need you." Bella was sobbing over his forehead. She pressed her lips to his sweaty skin and brushed her fingers over his hair. "Bella, back up, baby. Let the pack get him inside. Carlisle is here to help him." Charlie was holding onto her shoulders, trying to pull her away. "Daddy, I know, honey. You can go with them." Bella watched as the pack carefully lifted Paul's unconscious body and carried him in the house to Sam and Emily's guest bedroom. She followed them up the stairs and watched as they gently lay him on the bed. When she would have crawled in beside him, Sam held her fast. "Let Dr. Cullen work, Bella." Carlisle quickly examined the wolf, knowing the rest of his family's lives depended upon his survival. Edward had broken almost every bone on the left side of Paul's body. One of his broken ribs had punctured a lung, his spleen had been torn and he was covered in bruises. Carlisle had to do surgery to take out the spleen and stop some internal bleeding. The wolf was very lucky. Bella lay beside him, sleeping soundly for the first time in over a week. She had stayed awake watching as his body healed, wondering how she ever thought of a life with Edward. Paul was her everything. Emily sat at the side of the bed as Bella slept, wiping sweat from Paul's brow, neck and chest. She worried for her brother and her sister, knowing Bella would never survive if anything happened to him. She also worried about the rest of the pack, especially since there was a vampire, in pieces, in her backyard. Sam refused to allow Leah and Brady to kill Edward. He wanted Paul and Bella to have the final say. He really couldn't wait to watch him burn. He worried it wouldn't happen since Paul had been in a coma for almost 2 weeks. He could see the toll it was taking on Bella, as well as the rest of the pack. He kept wolves on constant guard of Edward, switching out every 4 hours, while he and Emily stayed with Bella and Paul. He had just lifted his coffee cup to take a drink when he heard her start to whimper. Bella sat up, screaming Paul's name. She looked around and saw him still unmoving beside her. She met Emily's eyes on the other side, tears leaking down her friend's cheeks. "Sorry, Em." Bella ran a hand through her tangled locks. She leaned over and pressed her lips to the forehead of her prone boyfriend. "Has he moved at all?" "No," Emily whispered as she ran the cool cloth along Paul's neck. "Bella, I'm worried about you. You haven't left this room in 2 weeks, you need to get some fresh air." "I can't." "She's right, sis," Sam interrupted. "Come on, take a walk with me." "Sam, I'm not asking you, Bella." Sam held out his hand and waited for her to join him. Sighing, Bella leaned over to Paul. "Sam is making me get fresh air. I love you." Pressing a kiss to his cheek and then his lips, she got out of the bed and followed Sam. Sam led her to the beach and they walked silently. He waited her out, knowing eventually she would open up. He didn't have to wait long. "I'm scared, Sam. What if he doesn't wake up?" She could feel her chest tighten at the thought. "Bella, Paul is a fighter. I'm sure he'll wake up soon." Sam put a comforting arm around her. "You guys are gonna have a happy life together, a long one. Jared, Paul and I are gonna drive you, Kim and Emily crazy when we're older." Bella smiled. "More than you already do." "Hey." Sam laughed. "The 3 of you wouldn't know what to do without us." Bella looked up at her brother. "You're right." She wrapped her arm around his waist and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thanks, Sam." Sam pressed a kiss to her hair. "He'll be okay, Bella. Remember, I've seen our destinies." Paul felt like he was floating in a sea of blackness and pain. He was trying to break through the surface, but just as he saw the light above, he sank back under. He could hear garbled noises and feel someone touching him, but he couldn't surface to see who it was. His conscious mind knew Bella must be going crazy with worry and felt his chest tug. He needed to see her, to touch her. He began fighting harder to break out of the dungeon his body was locked in. Bella stood staring out the bedroom window, allowing some sunlight in the darkened room. She could see the backyard from where she stood and stared at Jacob and Quill, whose turn it was to guard her vampire ex. Paul made his way out of the darkness and blinked open his eyes. He slowly looked around, letting his vision clear. He turned his head and met the beautiful sight of his imprint. She looked ethereal with the sunlight all around her. Licking his dry lips, "You look like an angel." Bella whipped around at the sound of his voice. She smiled softly when she saw his brown eyes on hers. Walking forward, she kneeled on the bed beside him and reached out to touch his face. "Don't ever do that to me again, Paul Lahote. I thought I'd lost you." "I'm here, baby." Paul reached up and cupped her cheek. "I love you, Bella." "I love you, too." Leaning down, she pressed her lips to his. When they broke apart, Paul studied her face. She had dark circles under her eyes and her cheeks had hollowed a little. "You need to eat and get some sleep." "I'll eat when you do. And I've slept a little, but the nightmares won't stay away." "Come here." Paul urged her to lay down beside him, wrapping his arm around her and pulling her to him. "Rest, baby. I've got you." When Emily poked her head in the door, she saw Bella curled around Paul and his arm around her. She said a silent thank you to Taha Aki and closed the door. She walked down the stairs and faced Sam and the rest of the pack. "He must have woken up at some point. He has his arms around her and they're both asleep." "Thank the spirits," Sam muttered as his brothers nodded. 2 days after he woke, Paul was walking around as if his injuries had never happened. Bella was still fussing over him, which he took good-naturedly. When it came to mealtimes, he pulled her onto his lap and made her eat. "So, is someone gonna tell me why there is a vampire in the backyard?" Jared grinned. "Pay up, motherfuckers." The pack thought Paul would let Edward suffer for at least a week. Jared argued it would only be a couple of days. Grumbling about how he could have known, the entire pack threw money at him. "I told Leah and Brady to keep him alive. I knew you would want to say on what happened to him," Sam told him. Paul nodded and pushed his empty plate from him. "I think we need to take him, all of him, to the treaty line and meet with the rest of them." "We should discuss what's gonna happen first," Jake suggested. "Edward is gonna burn." Bella stated matter-of-factly. "He would have drained me if Paul and Leah hadn't arrived when they did. Then he tried to kill Paul. He's dead in my opinion." "Agreed," Sam said with a nod. "What about the rest?" Seth asked. "Rosalie, Emmett and Jasper are innocent. They had no idea what was going on. I don't think Carlisle did either." Esme defended Edward above all else. "I'm fairly certain she wouldn't have protested if he had drained me." "Okay, so what are you thinking?" Jared asked what everyone else wanted to know. Bella sighed and stood from Paul's lap. Scrubbing her hands over her face, she looked out the window at the unmoving monster she used to love. She couldn't be responsible for separating a mated pair, but Alice's machinations were almost as bad as Edward's. But were they worth letting Jasper, who had never wronged her, live in agony without his mate? She turned and met the eyes of the pack, her family, before resting on Paul. Staring into his eyes, she knew what she needed to do. Bella sat on the back porch and stared at her ex. She finally cleared her throat and spoke to him. "I hate you, Edward. What you did to me, what you were gonna do to me. You're an evil monster. I guess that's what you always wanted me to think of you. Well, congratulations, I finally see what you really are. After tonight, you and your family are dead to me." Standing, she brushed off the back of her jeans. Walking in the house, she took the jacket Paul was handing her and smiled at him. "Let's get this over with." Stuffing body parts in bags, Sam and Jared then placed Edward's torso in a separate bag. Once they were all phased and someone was carrying a bag, Bella climbed on Paul and they took off for the clearing. The Cullens were waiting at the treaty line when they arrived. The pack phased back and walked forward, throwing down the bags with the parts. "Thanks for coming," Bella started as she clung to Paul's hand. "Edward is going to burn for his crimes, against me and against a member of the pack. In their eyes the treaty is broken. If you fight them on this, you will join him in his pyre." "We understand, Bella." Carlisle spoke, his expression one of grief. "Well, I don't," Esme glowered. "After all we've done for you, this is how you choose to repay us? I'm disappointed in you, Isabella." Bella laughed humorlessly. "Fuck you, Esme. All I have ever received at your hands is pain and suffering. Where you once called me your daughter, you now spew hatred. I'm glad you're not my mother. You make me sick. The only reason you aren't burning with Edward is because of Carlisle." Carlisle held fast to her when she would have attacked Bella. "If she makes another move like that, she will join your progeny, mates be damned. Sam growled. Carlisle nodded. Bella continued. Jasper. She waited until he met her eyes. I never blamed you for the events of my birthday. You're an empath who had to feel the bloodlust of 5 other vampires, one who was smelling his singer. That was not your fault. You're the strongest vampire I know. She turned to the gorgeous blonde next to the giant. Rosalie, I understand what you always tried to tell me. You were right. Looking at Paul, I know what it's like to want more. Turning back to them, Emmett, you'll always be the big brother I never had. I may have 2 others now, but you were the first. Turning to Carlisle, thank you for saving him. I know how to survive a broken heart, but I never would have survived the loss of half of my soul. Paul squeezed her hand and pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. Alice, you knew what Edward was doing and could have stopped it at any time. Only you know your reasons for staying quiet, but I have a feeling they were for selfish purposes. Looking down, she took a deep breath. While your actions are a violation of the treaty, I cannot knowingly allow Jasper to suffer the loss of his mate. Bella watched as Jasper sagged in relief and pulled Alice closer to his side. Carlisle looked at all of them and finally spoke. What would you like us to do? Bella looked at Sam and nodded her head. He turned to them. You are to leave this area and never return. The treaty is void. If we see you, your lives are forfeit. This is your one opportunity to leave. You have 24 hours to vacate the Olympic Peninsula. You would be wise to stay out of the state of Washington. Inform any of your kind of the protectors who reside here and the detriment they face if they are caught. Jake, Quill and Embry stepped forward with the sticks and wood gathered for the pyre, setting them aflame. Colin, Brady, Leah and Seth all stepped forward, each opening a bag and taking a piece of Edward out. Paul let go of Bella and picked up his torso. With no remorse or words, he tossed the bronze-haired fool into the fire and stepped back. Esme sobbed against Carlisle, who remained stoic. Rosalie clung to Emmett and Jasper watched him burn with a warrior's eyes, as Alice hugged herself to him. Once the purple smoke had cleared and the fire was nothing but embers, Carlisle spoke. Bella, I can't speak for my family, but I am so sorry for all the pain we've caused you. I did and will always love you as a daughter and wish you nothing but happiness in your future. Turning to Sam, we will do as you asked and never return to this place. We will arrange for the sale of our house, but that can be handled from afar. Goodbye, Carlisle. Thank you for saving Paul. Bella? Emmett spoke. Can I? He stepped forward and opened his arms. Looking up at Paul, he nodded and Bella walked forward to hug the one who had always treated her as a sister. Take care of yourself, Bella Boo. Goodbye, Bear. Once he released her, Rose stepped forward and hugged her. Be happy and have lots of babies. Bella giggled, I will. Letting her go, Bella backed up to where she knew Paul was standing. They watched as the Cullens nodded and then took off, disappearing into the night. Looking up into the eyes of her mate, let's go home. Picking her up, Paul nodded to the pack and ran them home on his own 2 feet. Phasing would have been faster, but he wanted to hold her. Sam and Jared smiled and ran toward where their own imprints waited for them, as Quill and Leah ran off for some time alone together. Jake and Embry ran toward his house for an evening of video games, while the younger 3 left to spend some time on their own. Brady and Colin's parents didn't know about the pack, so they had been sneaking out a lot. They were ready to be normal teenagers for a while. Seth just wanted to finally spend some time with his dad, maybe fishing with him, Charlie and Billy. With the Cullens leaving the area, the pack was ready to settle down, but Sam wouldn't let them become complacent. For now he would ease up a little on them, especially the younger ones. Paul stared at Bella as she lay sleeping beside him. He could only imagine what she went through when he was unconscious. The very thought of something happening to her was unfathomable to him. Stop it, she murmured. Stop what? Bella rolled over and looked in his eyes, feeling that ever-present jolt. You're fine and beside me now, Paul. Yes. I was a basket case, but I had the pack, just like you would have wanted. I'm sorry, baby. I just keep imagining how I would have felt if the tables were turned. I know, honey. Reaching up, she wrapped her hand around his neck and pulled him down to her. I love you, Paul, she whispered just as their lips met. Paul wasted no time deepening the kiss, needing to reconnect with her. Rolling them over, he hovered over her as he pressed his hardening cock against her. Bella moaned at the contact. raking her fingers down his spine. Shifting her hips, she pressed back and Paul knew they were on the same wavelength. Reaching down, he pulled at the sides of her panties, ripping them from her body. There was no foreplay, just a need to feel each other. Taking the time to make sure he was ready for him, he moved his dick through her already slick folds, before sliding home. Both of them moaned at being connected again. "Fuck, baby, you feel so good around me." Paul faster. Bella's legs wrapped tightly around his waist as he pistoned in and out of her. He could feel his orgasm approaching and reached between them to pinch her clit, sending her spiraling over the edge with his name on her lips. Paul growled out his climax and fell onto her, keeping most of his weight on his arms. Leaning down, he kissed her gently, letting his lips linger on hers. Bella sighed into his mouth, as Paul pushed his tongue into hers. She felt him harden inside her and rolled her hips experimentally. When Paul groaned, she knew they wouldn't be leaving their bed anytime soon. Paul surfaced slowly and reached across the bed, but it was empty and cold. He sat up and looked around, noticing the sun was on the western side of the house, meaning it was early evening. He listened for the sound of his mate and heard her moving around in the kitchen. Taking a deep breath, he smelled her spaghetti and garlic bread, and realized he was famished. After pulling on a pair of shorts, he walked down the stairs and could hear her talking. "He's fine, Sam." She burst out laughing, "As my big brother, do you really want to hear about my sex life?" Paul stood in the doorway and quietly chuckled as he heard Sam's response come over the line. "Well, then don't ask me." Bella laughed at him and heard someone snicker behind her. "I gotta go, Sam. I'll talk to you later." She hung up the phone and turned to see Paul leaning against the door. She walked over to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Hungry?" Leaning down, he pecked her lips. "Starving." "Good, sit down and I'll bring it over." Bella dished them both out some dinner and took it over to the table. She grabbed the bread, a bottle of beer and a Pepsi before joining him. Paul was quiet as he stuffed his mouth, thinking about something he had wanted to do for a while. It would take some care and consideration on his part to pull off, but he could do it. After dinner, Bella started clearing the table, but Paul stopped her. "I'll get this. Why don't you go take a bath, relax?" Bella cocked her head at him in question. "You sure?" Paul smiled and leaned down to peck her lips. "Yes." Shrugging, Bella walked up the stairs and into the bathroom in their bedroom. She ran the hot water, adding some unscented bubble bath, knowing the scent would affect Paul's sensitive nose. Down in the kitchen, Paul smiled hearing her relaxed sigh as she settled in the tub. After loading the dishes in the dishwasher and turning it on, he set about implementing his plan. He lit candles all around the living room and on every other step leading toward their bedroom. He lit a few on their dresser and one on each nightstand, setting the room aglow. Searching in the drawer of his nightstand, he found what he was looking for and slipped it in his pocket. Walking to the bathroom door, he knocked softly. "You okay in there, sweetheart? MMHMM." Bella sighed, shifting to let out the water. "I'm getting out. Do you want to watch a movie?" "Sure, I'll be in the living room." Paul walked back down the stairs, sat on the couch and waited. Bella dried herself off and slipped into the black satin nightie she had bought a long time ago. Now that everything with the Cullens was over, she was ready to live her life. Paul made her feel beautiful and sexy, so she wanted to show him. The bodice was made up of lace swirls that hugged her chest and offered a view of her cleavage, while the satin flowed down her torso, stopping an inch or two below her buttocks. She let her hair down out of the clip and fluffed it before walking out of the bathroom. She gasped when she saw the glow of candlelight and couldn't help the tears which sprang to her eyes. She slowly made her way down the stairs, following the other candles. When she stepped into the living room, she covered her mouth at the sight of Paul in the center of the room, down on one knee and a box in his hand. Paul gasped when he saw her and prayed he could keep control long enough to get the words out. "I've been trying to get up the nerve to do this for a while, but there was always something stopping me, although I don't know what." He looked in her eyes and the words he wanted just spilled forth. "I never wanted to imprint. I thought it was taking away my choices. Before I looked in your eyes, I knew you were different. I never saw you the way Sam and Jared do. You were never a sister to me." He chuckled when she giggled. "The day I imprinted on you, you became my everything. Nothing in this life means anything without you beside me. Even now, when I look in your eyes, I see our future and I can't wait to see it come true." Paul, Bella gasped. I love you, more than anything on earth. Say you'll be my wife and I swear you'll never regret it. Will you marry me? Bella nodded as tears tracked down her cheeks. Yes. Paul smiled and slipped the ring on her finger. Bella looked down and stared at the round diamond set in a white gold band. It's beautiful, Paul. I love you, Bella. I love you, too. Leaning down, he kissed her lips as she ran her arms up to wind around his neck. Paul's arms wrapped around her waist as he deepened the kiss, allowing his tongue to caress hers. Crouching, he grabbed her ass and lifted her up. Bella wrapped her legs around his waist. Paul carried her up the stairs as his lips made tracks down her neck to his mark. The pair of them celebrated well into the night and early morning hours, finally passing out as the sun peeked over the horizon. A month had gone by and the pack, as well as Bella and the other imprints, had settled into a routine. Emily, Kim and Bella were busy planning Bella's wedding, which was approaching fast. They had decided to get married near the end of August, and with permission from the elders, were heading to Florida for a week-long honeymoon, courtesy of Renee and Phil. However, as she sat at Emily and Sam's table with her friends, she wanted to pull her hair out and tell Paul they could go to the courthouse. Emily and Kim weren't listening to a word she said, only commenting snidely when she expressed what she wanted. It had been going on for a week. It was almost as if they were planning their own weddings, rather than hers, and she couldn't take it anymore. Slamming her hands on the table, Bella pushed back her chair. Enough. Kim and Emily stared at her in shock. Bella? Emily questioned. You guys aren't listening to anything I'm saying. This is my wedding to Paul, not yours. I don't want flowers everywhere or a long fucking dress. Jesus. I'd trip over air. You're making me want to elope. Hearing her yelling had brought the pack inside, Jared and Sam in protective mode. If you guys want your wedding this way, that's fine, but this is mine, damn it. You two are taking the fun out of this for me. So back off. Brushing the tears of frustration off her face, Bella ran from the house. What the hell is going on? Sam asked as he watched Bella run toward the beach. While Emily sniffled, Kim looked at the guys. We were just trying to help. I guess our help took over. She looked down at the floor. I'm gonna need a better explanation than that before I run after her. Paul crossed his arms and stared at the two women. We didn't mean to cross the line. She would tell us what she wanted. I guess we would make a face or something equally bad. Paul couldn't help glaring at Emily. Why? I know what she wants, what we both want. We want it on the beach, with just the pack and our families. She wants it at sunset and a bonfire reception. We know, but, Kim trailed off. There is no, but, Kim. This is our wedding. Do what you want with your own. But if Bella gets upset by this again. Paul didn't need to complete his thought. Looking at the imprints and then his brothers, he nodded and turned to follow Bella. Paul found Bella sitting on the beach, staring out over the waves. He watched her for a minute, reveling in his luck. He had done nothing in his life to deserve someone as good and decent as her, but he would spend the rest of his life making her as happy as she made him. Walking toward her, he sat down beside her on the log. You know, you're always by the water when you want to think. She smiled softly, but didn't look at him. I was never one of those girls who pictured her wedding or played house. Hell, I never wanted to get married. Until I met you. She looked at him. You changed everything, Paul. I want to marry you on the beach at sunset. I want to celebrate with our family and the pack around a bonfire. Looking back at the ocean. I guess it seems lame to Emily and Kim. Baby, if that's what you want, then we'll make it happen. I want you to be happy. CT Sam, Emily, Jared and Kim were sitting at the table eating silently. The girls felt horrible for not taking Bella's desires into consideration and the guys were disappointed in their imprints. We didn't mean to upset her. Emily looked at Sam. We honestly didn't even realize we were taking over anything. Did you listen to what she wanted? Jared asked. Or did you just think you knew better? It wasn't like that, Jared. We heard what she said, but we gave her ideas for what would work better, or so we thought. They weren't. Sam spoke for the first time. Bella and Paul know what they want. You need to respect that and you both need to apologize. Bella ran the brush through her freshly curled hair. Paul was taking her out for a date, a long overdue date. Although she wished it was just them, Sam and Jared had gotten wind of their plans and it had become a triple date. Baby, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell them no, Paul said from where he was seated on their bed. I guess Em and Kim want to talk to you, too. She put her brush down and walked out of the bathroom, stopping in front of him. It's okay. Do I wish it was just the two of us? Sure, but we have the rest of our lives, right? Paul nodded and stood up. He was dressed in black jeans and a black t-shirt stretched tightly across his chest. As he stood before her, Bella couldn't help running her eyes down his physique, following her eyes with her hands. Maybe we should stay home, she purred, looking up at him and watching his eyes darken with lust. Paul growled deep in his chest and pulled her tight to him, letting her feel every hard inch of him. Don't tempt me. He pressed his mouth to hers, pulling her bottom lip between his teeth. We need to go before I take you. Trust me when I say you won't be moving easily tomorrow. He slapped her ass as he walked away, causing her to squeak. Grinning at his retreating form, Bella finished getting ready. She pulled on a pair of black skinny jeans and her black ballet flats. She finished her outfit with a silver cold shoulder shirt. Satisfied with her appearance, she turned off the bedroom light and walked down the stairs. Paul turned as she walked into the room and stared. You're stunning. Bella blushed, but smiled. She walked to the counter and picked up her cell and shoved it into the back pocket of her pants. Ready? Yeah, Sam and Jared are meeting us there. The drive to Port Angeles took longer than the usual 45 minutes, but only because Bella and Paul couldn't keep their hands off each other. When they arrived at the bar, he parked and they walked hand in hand to where their friends were waiting. Jared and Sam smirked when they saw them, causing Bella to blush knowing they could smell her arousal. Shut up, fuckers. Paul growled. Let's just go inside. Bella pulled on his hand toward the front door, the others following behind. Emily, Kim and Bella found a table, while the guys went to the bar and got them drinks. The two of them took the opportunity to apologize to her for their actions. Bella, we are so sorry. We never meant to make you feel like your wishes weren't good enough, Emily started. Yeah, we know your wedding will be beautiful because it will be you and Paul committing yourselves to each other. Bella smiled at her friends. Thanks, guys. I know you meant well, but this is the only time I plan to get married and I want it to be my way. It better be the only time. Paul growled over her shoulder. He placed a bottle of water in front of Bella, as Sam and Jared did the same. Each of them carried a beer, but since Bella was still underage, Kim and Emily had agreed not to drink. Bella looked up at her fiancé. Come dance with me? He led her out to the dance floor and they moved to the beat of the music for what felt like hours. Their arms were wrapped around each other, Bella's head on his chest and his cheek resting on hers as they swayed to a slow song, when Paul smelled it. Without a word, he picked Bella up and noticed Sam and Jared doing the same with Emily and Kim. Paul, hang on, baby, we gotta go. What is it? Bella looked around for a threat. Leech. Paul growled. Sam, Jared and Paul set their imprints down and moved in front of them when they got to the parking lot. Standing in front of Paul's car were 4 red-eyed vampires. Stand down, shifters. We mean you no harm. Yeah, your red eyes say otherwise. Sam spoke, ever the alpha. Just as we smell to your kind, you stink to ours, another spoke. What do you want? Jared asked, wanting to get Kim away from the human drinkers. Allow me to introduce us. My name is Dimitri. He pointed to the larger vampire. This is Felix. He turned to the little girl and boy beside him. These are Jane and Alec. We are from the Volturi in Italy. Bella gasped at hearing who they were. They were essentially vampire royalty. Why are you here? No laws have been broken. Paul turned his head and glared at her over his shoulder. She put her head against his back and muttered an apology. Ah, but you see you are a human who knows about us. Paul stood up straighter and Bella could feel him shaking. She's also the marked mate of a supernatural being. Therefore she is not subject to your laws. She would have known about you regardless. Perhaps, Dimitri nodded. I'll ask again, what do you want? Sam nearly growled. We would like to speak with the human, then talk. Alone, Jane hissed. Well, that's not happening, Bella informed them. So say what you need to. Although your mate keeps you a part of the supernatural, your knowledge was still gained from sources who need to be punished. We are here on behalf of the Cullen Coven to inform you of their punishment. They are to serve 100 years with the Volturi, either in the guard or in some other manner. Dimitri explained. Our master, Arrow, was deeply saddened to hear of the demise of Edward Cullen. He had hoped the young vampire would join us. However, after reading the minds of the others, he understands there was no choice. He wanted to extend an invitation to you. Alec points at Bella. To join the Volturi. He seems to think you will possess a one-of-a-kind gift. Jane glares at Bella, but picks up where her brother left off. He wishes to assure you this will be a one-time offer and there will be no repercussions if you refuse. Bella was stunned. Why should I believe you when you say there won't be any repercussions? Dimitri shrugged. I suppose you'll have to trust us. The three wolves growled, but Bella placed her hand on Paul's arm. You'll have to forgive me, but past experience has taught me vampires aren't trustworthy. I want something in writing stating I won't be bothered by the Volturi ever again. Jane's hissed, I hate it when that pixie is right. Alec grinned and reached into his pocket. Alice Cullen anticipated what you would ask for. This is signed by all three brothers. We will no longer bother you. Sam took the envelope and after a look at Bella, opened it and read the contents. He nodded and handed it to her. Paul leaned his head on her shoulder and read with her. I appreciate this. I trust your business here is over. Bella folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. If you are not joining us, then yes. The four of them retreated back into the trees before disappearing. I'd like to go home now. Bella whispered and looked at Paul. I'm sure the three of you need to phase. Should we drive ourselves or are you containing the wolf? Sam looked at Jared and Paul. I'm not leaving Emily until you are all home safely. I believe we all feel the same about that. Let's go. Paul was still shaking as he and Bella settled in his car. Bella stared at her fiancé trying to figure out a way to calm him. Paul? I'm okay, Bella. I just need to get you home. Paul had a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. What can I do? Paul looked over at her and she gasped, seeing more of his wolf's eyes than his beautiful brown. Nothing, baby. I'll be fine when I get you home and can let out the wolf for a while. Bella sat back, but placed her hand on his arm, needing to touch him to know he was there. Paul pulled his car into the driveway and took a deep breath. He looked in his rear view and saw Sam and Jared pulling up behind him. Turning, he looked at Bella. I need you to go inside and wait with Emily and Kim. I promise I'll be back as soon as I can, but the wolf won't let me be right now. Leaning forward, she pressed her lips to his. I love you. I love you. Exiting the car, the three of them walked to the tree line, making sure the girls were inside before the wolves took over. The three of them ran hard, not speaking, culling a few trees on their route. They ran all the way to Canada before they stopped. I'm trying to see the bright side here. P. What's that, J? That the leeches are completely gone from her life, P. True, you won't have to have the Cullens hanging over you like a shadow anymore, S. Sam, do you think this is a step toward a normal life for all of us, P? Maybe. I still won't let us get complacent, but maybe, S. Let's go home. JCT. Bella stared out the window, while Emily and Kim sat on the couch watching TV. The three of them waiting for their men to return. She was having trouble believing vampires were really out of her life forever and she couldn't fathom why the Cullens were with the Volturi. The longer she stared out into the night, the less it began to matter. They were gone and she could live her life with Paul without interruption. Suddenly she couldn't wait. Paul, Sam and Jared finally returned after a few hours and the other couples left, leaving Bella and Paul alone. You okay? Paul asked as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. Yeah, I'm amazing actually. They're gone, forever. She turned in his arms and looked up into his eyes. I knew they were when the treaty was voided, but this just makes it so much more final. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in 2 years. It's a wonderful feeling. Lowering his head, Paul pressed his lips to hers. Nothing is standing in your way now, Bella. You can do whatever you want. Bella ran her hands across his shoulders and down his chest, tracing the curves of his muscles. What I want is to marry you and make babies. Paul smirked at her and picked her up, causing her to laugh as he ran them to their room. I say let's get started. Bella stared at her reflection in the mirror as she ran her hands down the front of her dress. The white material flowed down her body with a short train falling behind her. The satin bodice was a silver color that closely matched the fur of Paul's wolf. Her hair was pulled back on the sides with silver combs while the rest fell down her back in soft curls. She had kept her makeup light, knowing Paul liked her without it. On her feet were the white moccasins Sue had made her. "Bella," Charlie called up the stairs, "it's time to go." "Okay." She smiled at her reflection, before resting her hands where her unborn child rested. It was her secret and she couldn't wait to tell Paul. She only hoped none of the others picked up on the tiny heartbeat with their enhanced hearing. She slowly made her way down the stairs and stopped before her father, who stared at her with tears in his eyes. "You look so beautiful, Bells." "Thanks, Daddy." "You ready to do this?" "I'm ready." She took her dad's elbow and walked with him to where Sam was waiting with his truck. "Wow, little sis, you look lovely." He leaned down and kissed her cheek. "Let's get you married." Paul stood at the end of the makeshift aisle on the beach with Jared at his side. The longer he stood there, the more anxious he became. He couldn't wait to begin his life with Bella and maybe start a family, something he never thought he wanted or would have. "Calm down, bro." Jared put a hand on Paul's shoulder. "You're rattling my wolf." "Sorry, I just want to see her and get this over with. I'm ready for the next chapter, you know?" "I know. She'll be here soon." No sooner had the words been said, did Sam make his way up the aisle. He grinned at his brother and took his place beside Jared. "She's gorgeous, Paul." "Thanks, Sam." Old Quill took his place beside the boys as Kim, followed by Emily, made their way toward them. Both women looked beautiful in the sage green dresses Bella had decided on, which perfectly matched Sam and Jared's shirts. Both of them had on black pants, while Paul wore gray slacks with a white shirt. Since they were getting married on the beach, Bella hadn't wanted them to overheat. "Please stand," Old Quill requested of those present, which were only a select few. Bella and Charlie stood at the top of the aisle and began their trek forward. When Paul laid eyes on her, he felt tears slide down his cheeks. He had never seen her look more beautiful and he couldn't believe she was his. Once she arrived before him, he could help himself from reaching over and wiping her tears away as she did his. Old Quill led them through the traditional Quileute wedding ceremony and soon they were pronounced husband and wife. "I love you, Bella Lahote," Paul whispered before he pressed his lips to hers, sealing their vows. "I love you, too." The pair of them turned to face their guests and asked them to join them for a celebration at Sam and Emily's. The reception was in full swing, with a large bonfire burning, but the happy couple were nowhere to be found. Paul and Bella had snuck away down to the beach, to the piece of driftwood they always went to talk or think. "Happy, baby?" Paul had his arms wrapped around his wife. "Very much so." Bella leaned her head back against his shoulder, her back to his chest. "I do have something to tell you, though." "What?" "Well, remember how we talked about starting a family soon?" "Bella?" Bella took his hands and pulled them down to settle over their unborn child. "We did." Paul pulled Bella to her feet as he rose to his. "Seriously?" Bella nodded at her husband. "I had it confirmed yesterday. I'm pregnant." Paul dropped to his knees before her and placed his ear over where their baby grew. He listened closely and finally heard what sounded like wings fluttering. He looked up at her and had tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Bella." He got up from his knees and softly pressed his lips to hers. "For what?" Bella asked when they broke apart. "For loving me, for giving me a family, for accepting the imprint." Bella smiled softly as their lips met once more. 8 months later, Bella was sweating profusely and gripping tightly to Paul's hand as she tried to push their baby into the world. "Ah!" she cried out. "Breathe, Bella, you can do this," Sue encouraged. Paul wiped her brow and pressed his lips to her forehead. "You can do this, sweetheart. Just a couple more and our baby will be here." "Here comes another one, Bella." "Push." Bella bore down and pushed with all her might, until a cry was heard and Sue was placing her baby on her chest. "Congratulations, it's a girl." "Thank you, Sue." Bella thanked the woman without taking her eyes off her daughter. Leah stepped forward with a blanket. "I need to clean her up, Bells, while Mom finishes up with you." Bella reluctantly let go of her daughter and watched as Leah carried out of the room. She looked up at Paul. "Go tell the pack." He kissed her lips and left the room as Sue delivered her placenta and began cleaning her up. Once Bella was ready, Paul came back, with Emily and Kim behind him, and picked her up. The two women quickly changed the sheets, discarding the soiled items from the delivery. Once everything was fresh, Paul gently placed Bella in the bed, raised up by pillows, just as Leah came back with their daughter. "I think someone is hungry." Bella lowered her gown and watched as the baby immediately latched on and began suckling. Paul watched the pair of them in awe. He didn't know you could love someone so much so fast, but his wife and daughter were proving you could. The pack slowly filed in once the baby was done eating, wanting to see the first pack pup. Sam and Emily stood to the side of the bed, as the rest gathered around them. "What's her name, Bells?" Charlie wanted to know as he stared at his granddaughter. Bella looked at Paul, who nodded at her with a smile. "We'd like you to meet Samantha Jade Lahote." Samantha after her uncle, because if he hadn't found me when Edward left, she wouldn't be here. Sam looked at Bella. "I'm honored, sister." Bella and Sam continued to stare at each other, both knowing what the other was thinking. Yes, Sam had found her, but he had also saved her from a miserable future. When he found her that day on the cliffs, changing their destinies, he led her to true happiness and where she belonged. The end. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe for more such videos and don't forget to drop your reviews in comment box.